I was friends with the ghost. When I was around the age of 4, I had a demon as a friend. Her name was Dorothy, and she didn't look like most ghosts I would see. She had purple hair that was always in twin braids. She wore a black dress that went down to her ankles, and her eyes and mouth were completely blacked out. And you couldn't see her tongue or teeth, just darkness and palish skin. But I was never scared of her. She protected me and my sister from a dark figure that lived in our house with us. The figure was constantly trying to kill us and drag us down to hell, but it obviously feared her, so it left us alone. But Dorothy also made people believe that I was psychotic because she would ask me to kill my classmates and random people on the streets. She also gave me really detailed ways of how to dispose of the corpse, like drowning it in acid until it became ashes, and put the ashes in a tea pitcher inside the fridge so my family would drink it. But I never ended up killing anyone, even though I hurt them and drew plans to murdering them in my drawing books. Everyone at school feared me, but I never understood why, until I got a bit older and realized how terrifying it had to be for them to sit in a room with another child trying to plan out their death. But for the most part, Dorothy was nice. She helped me laugh when I cried, and even played with me when my sister didn't feel like it. But each night, she brought me out of the house, and we walked down to a pond down the street from my house, and she would sink, telling me, "Don't worry, dear child, I will be back in the morning, but I have to go home now." But only when she said that, she sounded like an adult. But any other time of the day, she sounded like a child. My mom used to believe she was an imaginary friend of mine, but I went under the bed and in the closet with her, and even creepier, I would sit in the corner of my parents' room and watch them sleep. Dorothy also taught me how to work guns when I was 5, but my parents never found out. My sister didn't know who Dorothy was for a while, but she found out when Dorothy took form of a laundry basket in her room one day and started laughing, which had my sister frozen in fear until I said, "Hi, Dorothy," which scared her even more, but she started to ease up when Dorothy started talking. "It's fine, I'm Sabrina's friend, and I want to be your friend too," in a sweet child's tone. My sister ended up being friends with her too in the end, but one day, I never got to see her again. It was the normal night for me. Walk down to the pond with Dorothy so she can go home, but this time she was crying out this black liquid, and it looked almost like her eyes were melting, and she seemed hesitant to go back but also scared at the same time. I asked her why she was crying, but she gave no response. So when we got down there for her to go home for the very last time, she said something different. She hugged me and began to sink like every day, but she said this, "Bye, my sweet child. I'm sorry, but I won't be able to see you for a while, but I will be back one day." Then she broke out in maniacal laughter and tears, but when her chin touched the water, the laughing stopped, and her face started to flake and break like porcelain, and she started screaming, and she told me to run, so I did, and I never saw Dorothy again. But I always felt bad about it because I felt like it was a child that drowned that night, but she wasn't a child. She just took form of one. I don't know when she will come back, but it's been a few years, and I've had that question running through my head for a while now.
About 10 years ago, when I was 12, I moved into a more safer and calmer neighborhood. About a week after I realized an ice cream truck came every Sunday, I was excited. My mom didn't assist me since I was old enough to do it on my own. When I previously lived at my old house, my favorite ice cream flavor was cherry chocolate chip, hence I've been eating that flavor since I was 3. I never really changed that flavor when ordering, but it was okay. After about 5 months, I started to realize that my favorite ice cream flavor was starting to taste as if there was something weird in it, but I didn't mind it. One day my mom asked to taste my ice cream and I agreed and gave it to her. She tasted it and had a concerned look on her face. Over time I obviously got bored of that flavor, so I wanted to get other flavored ice creams. Around the time of all of this, I started to feel sick and tired. I blamed it on my lack of sleep. Anyways, I went to order chocolate ice cream. The man selling the ice creams were getting pissed at me, telling me if I was sure that I don't want any cherry ice cream. I started to get suspicious. I talked to my mom about it and she said that she would look into it, since she was a nurse who had knowledge and links. So I bought the cherry chocolate flavor again and gave it to my mum so that she could test on it, and she did. When she came back, we found out that he was actually drugging me, causing me to feel sick, so we reported him, but he was not caught. I can't help thinking what would have happened if I didn't give my mum the ice cream to taste.
I woke up, startled by the sudden sound of thunder. Damn, that scared the shit out of me. I took off the blanket, and at that moment, I got a sudden, severe headache. I fell to the floor and rolled, strongly holding my head. And the memories of the day popped up in my head. The same sound of thunder like that day. The rain was beating hard against the windows, as if it was about to break them. I woke up in the middle of the night and walked to the kitchen. At that time, I heard a faint sound, which was really weird, like someone's mouth was suddenly gagged while screaming. But I couldn't hear properly because it was soon drowned out by the sound of rain. I drank up a glass of water, and all of a sudden I saw something standing at the front door of the next house, which was visible through the window in my living room. With a flash of lightning, I found a vague silhouette of a human who was getting rained on without an umbrella. Thinking if I saw things, I tried clearly to see what it was, but I couldn't because it was too dark. After a while, lightning flashed once again and I saw a woman and a man dancing together. I dropped the glass on my big toe and groaned with pain. When another lightning stroke again, I saw a woman dancing with somebody. She was grinning from ear to ear. However, the man dancing with her was lifelessly swung around, just like a dummy by the woman. As it was kind of creepy, I checked the door to make sure it was locked. Then I turned my eyes to them again to clearly see what they were doing. At that moment, her eyes suddenly turned to me. I got startled and immediately hid myself. I was not sure whether she got aware of me or if she was just looking in this direction. When I looked back through the window after a couple of minutes, they were gone. Come on, this is not funny. Please. Muttering in a low voice, I looked around a bit nervously, then went back to my room. Next morning, it was noisy outside the house next door. There were several police officers, and I found the man next door was found dead. One of the police came to me and asked me if anything had happened to me last night. So I said, I saw a man and a woman were dancing in front of the house, and I hurt my big toe. The police showed me a picture of his dead body and asked me if he was the man I saw last night. In the picture, all of his joints were terribly broken and twisted, and the body was horribly bloated by rain. It was even hard to recognize, but it certainly looked like him. Then the police showed me another picture of a woman who really looked like the one I saw last night. She was the dead man's wife, who already died 3 years ago. As far as I know, she had a severe mental illness while she was alive. Bullshit! She already died 3 years ago. But how come? I was extremely confused. A few days later, the police came to my house again and said, last night another man living across the way died, completely soaked by rain, just like the previous case. Did you see or notice anything strange last night? I was shocked, speechless. The police continued, take care of yourself on a rainy day, especially when it's with thunder and lightning. Nobody can ensure your safety. I gulped with fear. It was so loud the police might hear it. Since then, there have been a number of witnesses telling that they're seeing the dancing woman night after night. Even there was a rumor that never make eye contact with the dancing woman at night, because several more men went missing in the village after that day. The police conducted a large-scale investigation, but they got nowhere. And one day, on a rainy night, I heard someone knocking at my door. I walked up to the door and looked outside through the window. I saw a woman in a white dress standing in front of my door. completely soaked with rain. I felt my heart suddenly thumped in the chest because she was dancing alone, holding a knife. I shouted, "Fuck off! I don't like dancing!" Frightened, I missed my footing while shrinking back from her and fell backward, and I was still seeing her silhouette dancing alone through the window. "I'll call the police!" I shouted again. Then the silhouette disappeared, and fortunately, nothing happened that night. And I moved out from that house, and 6 years have passed since then. I haven't heard any news about that village and the woman anymore. But even now, I completely lock all the doors and windows of my house when it rains and lightning strikes. Sometimes it feels like I can hear her laughing from the yard, or I see her shadow dancing frantically. Well, all this might be just hallucinations. But nevertheless, I didn't look out through the window to identify that. Until today, I still have no idea who she was. Just one thing I can't ever forget is her dancing. Looking back on it now, maybe that was not dancing, but stabbing the man frantically with a knife.
This happened to me 2 years ago, and I still think about it to this day. One summer, my family and I decided to visit my favorite cousin and her family because we were bored at home. We were so excited to finally see each other after so long. My uncle thought it would be a good idea to take us to the pool to beat the summer heat. We left the house around 5:30 to the community pool. When we got there, there was barely anyone there but us and 2 or 3 other people. So we put our belongings on the pool chair and jumped into the pool. After a few minutes of talking and playing in the pool with my cousin, something caught my eye. As I glanced over, not far from us, there was a scrawny boy with brown hair. He had on swim trunks, and he looked like he was a teenager. I noticed his eyes were red and puffy, and his face looked like he was about to cry. I didn't really think much of it and tried to forget about him while I was talking to my cousin, who apparently didn't notice. But every time I would glance over at him, I would notice every few minutes he would glance at his watch nervously, which was bulky and black on his skinny wrist. 6:42, 6:51, 7:02, 7:13, 7:18. Around 7:30, when the sun was beginning to set, we decided to go home. Before we left, we took one last glance to see if he was still there, and sure enough he was, in the same position with his eyes fixated on the water below. It seemed like he was alone, and he had been there before we had arrived. Then me and my cousin went home and we forgot all about this strange experience. A few days later, we got the news that a teenage boy had taken his own life by drowning in the community pool. I was extremely shocked because it reminded me of the same boy I saw days ago at the same pool. One of the neighbors told us that the police reports claimed the night before he was on the dark web. He met a strange man who threatened him to complete a mission before sunset, or else he would find him and kill him and his family. The mission was for him to go to the community pool and kill someone there and bring them the dead body of a young girl. Perplexed and anxious, he decided to sacrifice himself instead. The police couldn't track down the man from the dark web, and I still wonder to this day what would have happened if the boy decided to actually complete the strange man's mission. What if the person he was supposed to kill was me or my cousin?
A few years back, I can remember it was my birthday, and I was going to school expecting everyone to bombard me with birthday wishes. By the way, I was turning 14 and I was in the 8th grade. When I got to school, everyone did exactly what I thought because I was pretty popular. As I walked through all of my friends, I approached my locker, and as I looked up, I noticed a new janitor cleaning something up by the boys' bathroom, which was at the end of the hallway where no one ever goes. I've never seen that janitor before, but when I saw him, he stopped mopping the floor. He stood up straight, smiled, and said, "Happy birthday, gorgeous." I just looked at him, and then I walked to my first class as fast as I could. By the time we hit 5th period lunch, a few of us noticed that our friend Martin wasn't in school. Every year he would always get the perfect attendance award, so this wasn't normal for him. We all made it to sixth period, and I had to go to the bathroom because I was actually on my period and had to change my pad and pee. When I walked into the bathroom, I noticed that one of the stalls was out of order and another one was occupied. And being that there were only 3 stalls, I went to the middle stall, while someone else was in the one right next to me. So as I was using the bathroom, I noticed that there wasn't any toilet paper, so I asked the person in this next stall to me. I said, "Hey, can you hand me some toilet paper?" And immediately the girl threw some toilet paper on the floor from her stall to mine. I thought that was rude and awkward. So I did what I had to do and I started to switch my pad when I heard, "You definitely look like a grown woman to me." The voice came from above me on my left. I looked up and above me, peeking over the stall, was that new janitor. He was standing on the toilet. I got up, began to run, but he reached over the wall and he grabbed my hair. It jerked me back, but he lost his grip. I ran out of the bathroom and I ran to the closest classroom and I told the teacher. He ran into the bathroom as the man was running out of the bathroom and they both ran into each other and fell to the floor. The teacher got up and got on the guy's back and began to choke him as a female teacher told all the kids who rushed the hallway to get back in the classrooms. She also called the police. When the cops showed up, the man woke up. Our teacher actually put the guy out. He put him to sleep. Cops apprehended the man and he immediately told them to check locker 111. It was a vacant locker. The man said that he was waiting outside of our school in the shadows and saw the boys from our basketball team leaving practice the night before at around 6 p.m. And at that point it was dark outside, because it was the winter. Then he noticed someone walking by themselves. It was our friend Martin. The man approached Martin in his van and he overpowered him and he got him to his van. What he did to him was unspeakable. Then he took Martin back to our school, broke in without triggering the alarm, and stuffed him in locker 111. Come to find out, this man didn't even work at our school. He was just cleaning the mess that he made, and he stayed in the school all day without anyone questioning who he was. So the police asked him why he did what he did. What was his motive? His answer simply was, "I don't know, because it was Tuesday."
This story goes way back to 1998, when I was 16 years old. I was hanging out with a couple of friends of mine, who I will call Ben and Jake. It was a late summer evening on a Saturday, and I was sitting in my room listening to some 80s rock albums, as teenagers would normally do back then. After a while I got bored and went outside to meet up with my friends. We ended up chilling in Ben's garage, drinking beer and smoking pot. I can't remember exactly how, but we wound up walking down this narrow path by the woods and towards the lake. I guess we got bored of sitting around and went out to go do something. So back in '98, there was this popular hangout spot for teenagers in my neighborhood. So we were hoping to see some other kids there, but when we arrived, we were met with nothing but the sound of crickets. Bummer. So we sat on the bench for a while and just talked for about 15 minutes. Then Jake got the idea to go to an abandoned 2-story boathouse that was by the lake. We had nothing better to do, so we agreed. We soon entered the boathouse and started to explore. I just sort of stood there while Jake and Ben were going around breaking shit. I felt very uncomfortable, and I couldn't quite shake the feeling that we were being watched. We went upstairs where there was an old wooden boat lying there with a fishing net over it. While checking it out, from downstairs we all heard the wooden door to the boathouse creak open, followed by heavy footsteps. We all froze in place and listened carefully. There was around a 5-second break when we heard a terrifying voice call out to us.
"I know you're here. Come out, wherever you are."
The heavy footsteps started to walk towards the stairs as the old floorboards creaked and moaned. Jake went inside the wooden boat, and Ben and I followed. We put the fishing net over our heads and didn't move. The footsteps soon reached the top of the stairs.
I can hear you.
We were all as still as cadavers as we sat there and listened to this deranged person stumble around, looking for us. I contemplated a plan of escape without being caught, but there was just no way for the three of us to make it past him. And he was closing in on us. We were literally like sitting ducks. The man moved out of sight when he entered a small room adjacent to the boat. We suddenly ripped off the fishing net and made a break for it.
There you are.
The man said as he emerged from the room and rushed at Jake. But Jake reacted very quickly and shoved the man, sending him toppling over. We all ran like hell out of there and through the tall grass into the woods. We heard the man give chase, but he eventually gave up. We all went back to Ben's garage and fell onto the couch in exhaustion. Jake then told us that he saw a knife in the man's hand as he fell over. Ben and I sat there in utter shock. Did that fucking maniac really plan on killing us in that old boathouse? To this day, I can't help but wonder, what would have happened to us if Jake hadn't reacted so quickly?
This is an unbelievable true story that really happened to me. This happening completely changed my whole life. Now, I'm not who I used to be anymore. One day 5 years ago, I was watching YouTube as usual. While scrolling down through my recommendeds, I found a thumbnail of a YouTuber who looked exactly the same as me. Hugely surprised, I clicked it. To my surprise, the YouTuber in the video had my face. I mean, his eyes, nose, mouth, and even the shape of his nostrils looked just like mine. Also, his voice, the way he smiled, the shape of his eyebrows, and the spots on his face looked exactly the same as mine. When I first saw the video, I thought maybe I had uploaded it and had some partial amnesia or something. But obviously that didn't make sense. How could I have made that many videos and not remember them? I showed it to my parents and friends. I told them it wasn't me, but they just laughed at me, saying things like, "Don't be ridiculous. So what, is this your doppelganger?" No matter how hard I tried to explain, they didn't believe me. They just kept giggling watching those videos. They were completely convinced that the YouTuber in the video was me. I asked my mom if I had a twin brother or something, but she said, "Are you making a prank video or something like that? Oh, you really are a YouTuber." Well, even if I had a twin, that wouldn't actually explain anything. Even twins don't look exactly the same. Suddenly, I wondered if someone made a composite with computer graphics using my face image. But why? I'm not a celebrity or a handsome guy. Why would anyone use my face? I'm just an ordinary dude. So I sent an email with my picture to the YouTuber to figure out the truth. Who are you? Why are you using my face? Or is that really what you look like? I also sent some pictures of my forearm with an old burn scar that I got when I was 7, and my belly button, which looked very unique. I thought these things could never be the same. Several days later, I got a reply from him. He said, "Nice try. You made a composite with my face. I bet my toes that you're fooling around with my picture. Seriously though, if you really look the same as me, I would gladly cut my little toe and send it to you. By the way, how did you know about the scar on my forearm? Who the hell are you? I'm interested. If you really want to prove your face, make a video call to me. That would make for some interesting content." So I video called him. As soon as the video was on, both he and I grabbed our hearts and we began to suffocate. Exactly the same faces. There were 2 of me. I barely pushed an end call button, and when his face disappeared, the pain also stopped. He also looked extremely shocked. I mean, his face looked exactly the same as when I got shocked. I sent an email saying, "Now you believe me? You gonna cut off your toe?" He didn't answer. Then, one day, a new video was uploaded on his channel. with the title, The Doppelganger. When I found it, I got goosebumps all over, but I couldn't help but check it out. In the video, he kept gazing at the camera with an expressionless face for a while. Then, with a bizarre smile, he picked up a mirror and began to stare at himself inside of it. He kept staring at himself for almost an hour, laughing like crazy. And in the end, he smashed the mirror and shouted, "Is it your face or mine?" It was extremely creepy. After that last video, nothing was uploaded on the channel anymore. Even several weeks since that day, there wasn't any new content uploaded. I got nervous. What if something bad happened to him? A few days later, I got a call. When I picked up the phone, my heart sank. "Hello, sir. This is Officer Ackles. Is this Mr. James speaking?" "Yes, this is James. Any problem?" I asked in a shaky voice. What the police said next made me feel like my heart dropped to my feet. "James, a man with the same name as you is missing. We found he recently communicated with you through email. We're now tracing him and he boarded a flight to the US. Can you tell us anything about him?" I was shocked again. Not only his face, but also his name was the same as mine. According to the police, they found a notebook at his house which was written like this: May 12, 2017. It feels like I've been disappearing from the world since I met him. My face in the mirror is getting shadowed by the black like a black hole. The mirror doesn't show my face anymore. May 15th, 2017. I am losing my sense of identity. Even when somebody calls my name, I don't know whether they're calling me or somebody else. I really don't know who I am anymore. May 27th, 2017. Yesterday I threw up blood and was carried to the emergency room. The doctor said my organs were rotting. He didn't know why this was happening to me or how to treat it. He just looked at me helplessly. June 3rd, 2017. Today I suddenly passed out on the street while walking. I was really lucky to get CPR from a passerby. He said my heart wasn't beating for a while. June 5th, 2017. In bed, I saw a creepy black figure standing in front of me. Standing still, the figure said, "You saw what you shouldn't." June 6, 2017. Things to do this week. 1. Find other me. 2. Get rid of him. With this last memo, there was no more writing and it was assumed he left home right after this. However, a thought had suddenly struck me. I had emailed him my home address. As I couldn't even imagine what was going to happen, I began to panic. The next day, one of my friends texted me, and the message shocked me again. "Hey man, it was nice to see you yesterday. Thanks for the drinks, by the way. You look different. Pretty weird." I called him right away to figure out what happened. He said, "Yeah, you're back today. Did I meet your doppelganger yesterday?" I asked him to tell me what had happened, making an excuse that I was blackout drunk. Then he said, "Are you kidding me? We giggled and chatted. We looked at the pictures we took before at your home. Dude, how did you not know your way home? I was totally worn out after taking you to your house." At that moment, it felt like the world stopped. I was unable to say a word. My ears began to ring, and my friend's voice asking whether I was okay just sounded like buzzing. I knew that man was coming to me, and I became engulfed in fear. I rushed into my room and closed the door. However, I heard my family chattering away in the living room, and soon, my legs turned into jelly, because I also heard my own voice out of their chattering, with the sound of my laughter as well. I began to tremble with fear, standing behind the door. After a while, I heard footsteps coming up to my room, closer and closer. Then, the door handle was turned slowly and the door opened, and there was him. No, me standing at the door. I stood speechlessly, face to face with the other me. He grinned and walked towards a full-length mirror in the room. Then, he gazed in the mirror at his face and my face, alternately. He repeated that faster and faster and began to gasp for breath. I can't fucking see myself in the mirror anymore! He shouted like this and suddenly rushed towards me with a horrible shriek. Ah! I fell on my back and he shouted while choking me. Why me? If it's between me and you, then you gotta die! It makes sense that way! Bullshit! Get off of me! Please, we need to talk! I was almost fainting away. And then, he suddenly stopped and fell down on the floor. He rolled over and over, grabbing his face and howling in pain. His eyes began to swell as if they were going to pop, and his nose bled from both nostrils. His face got twisted and distorted. I also heard the awful sound of his jawbone falling off, and the crunching sound from the bones all in his body. I screamed, absolutely paralyzed by that dreadful scene. While he was screaming and rolling over, the sound of his bones and tendons being broken. But soon, he went deadly silent. When I looked at him, his face had turned into a completely different look and he already stopped breathing. I called 911. Since his face was awfully disfigured, the police had great difficulties in identifying him. Besides, his fingerprints were exactly the same as mine, which totally made the police confused. The police searched his house and his belongings thoroughly and got in touch with his friends and acquaintances. But all of them said they didn't know him. After all this, it was closed as an unsolved case, without any result. To this day, I have no idea who he was. Nobody in this world knows who he was. A long time has passed since then, but I still suffer from nightmares. In the dream, he or I come closer and squeeze my throat. I suffer from that pain to death. Then, when I'm almost at my last gasp, I barely awake from the nightmare. I haven't been able to look in the mirror since then. I'm going to get plastic surgery soon. That may be the only way out from this nightmare.
I live in Birmingham, and this happened when I was 14 years of age. My house was situated in the suburban area right next to a dense forest. We had a balcony facing the forest with a glass door from where we could see into the darkness of the forest. One night, my parents had to attend a meeting and wouldn't be back until midnight. So basically, I was home alone with my brother, who was 11 at the time. We had our dinner and went to bed around 8 p.m. Our rooms were upstairs while the balcony and the entrance were downstairs. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I was scrolling through my phone that I heard a screeching sound from outside my room. I shrugged it off, thinking it was the neighbor's cat or something. Exactly 5 minutes after that, I heard the same screeching sound, even louder this time. I immediately checked up on my brother, who was sound asleep. I went downstairs and found out that it was coming from the direction of the balcony, and when I walked towards it, the sound got louder. I walked closer and took a look at the glass door, and what I saw shook me to this day. There were two men. One of them was cutting the other's arm and using his blood to write something on the glass with the same knife. Exactly at that moment, when they saw me, both of them started banging on the door. I was paralyzed with fear, and in spite of that, I ran to my brother's room and shook him up. He saw the fear in my eyes. We jumped from the window of his room. Luckily, it was on the first floor. We heard the sound of glass shattering as we jumped. Both of us ran until we reached the neighbor's house and called the cops. The cops arrived 20 minutes later. All of us went back to our house to check what had happened. I explained everything to the cops and they searched the whole house but found absolutely nothing except for the broken glass door. I still don't know to this day what would have happened if I hadn't been alert enough and what those men planned on doing with us.
This happened to me yesterday. I'm Darshana, and I'm 13 years old, and I'm a girl that loves to go on adventures. I love soccer and dance, and I've won a lot of awards for them. My building is a 6-story building, so we had a dental clinic on the first floor. So they had to go down where the tools were kept, and there was a short circuit in the building, and a fire happened, and all the tenants in the building ran out. The police and firefighters came to help, and they rescued 4 people from the top floors. So me, my brother, and 4 friends, we were just a little away from the group, and I'm the biggest among all of them. And when I was walking, I saw a shadow from what it looked like someone was chopping something and eating something, so I decided to take a closer look. When I went closer, I was shocked, as there was an old man, and he was usually the one who played with us, and everyone loved him. But after we saw him, we looked down and saw our friend's dead bodies, fully chopped and half-eaten. Then he looked up at us, took the knife, and licked the blood from the knife. And as I said previously, I love adventures, so I tried my level best to fight him. And he was really strong, and I'm a girl, and he thought he could defeat me, but he didn't. By just a little, I got stabbed, and he tried to run behind my brother to kill him, but I threw a stone and kicked him and punched the face of that bloody old man. We tied him up and then showed the police. They were all surprised that I had found the most wanted criminal. They congratulated me, but by the time I fainted and the next time I opened my eyes, I saw myself in the hospital. They all thanked me for saving their children's lives. I just got out of the hospital. I hope he never comes back.
This story is from my classmate in high school. He said that this happened to his uncle on Christmas night. His uncle is a dispatcher and was the one who answered the call for this particular accident. He said that at 2:03 a.m., he got a weird phone call from a man who sounded like he was in his mid to late 30s. The man said, "Can you locate my phone? I got lost somewhere between the borders of two cities and got into an accident." His uncle asked, "What building or landmark did you last see, sir?" He replied with, "There was this commercial building that looked like only a few offices had been rented from it. That's the last thing I saw, and after that, the only thing I remember seeing were trees." He asked the guy if he was hurt or anything and quickly located his phone. They sent 2 police officers to the scene, and this is what happened. When they arrived at the accident, they saw the car had totally smashed into this mahogany tree. They did not expect to see this because the guy who called seemed okay, but they phoned the emergency hotline anyway and contacted the hospital before going to the wreckage site. When they got closer to the accident, a man with a green shirt appeared from behind the trees and asked them, "What took you so long?" The policeman told him that the office was busy because there were a lot of accidents that had happened. The man only smiled sadly. They told the guy to settle in one place because the medics would arrive shortly. The police took photos of the wrecked car, inside and out. There was this one photo where the man in the green shirt was staring sadly at his car. After the police had finished snapping photos, the man just walked away to the back of his car. The police noticed that the car was completely wrecked, but the guy didn't seem to have a scratch on him. One of the cops turned his head to tell the man to settle in one place as the medics had arrived and they needed to question him. But when he turned his head, he saw nothing but the flashing lights of the emergency car. He asked the other policeman where the guy with the green shirt went, and the other policeman said he saw the man walk behind the car. They searched for the guy everywhere, but found nothing. The other policeman told him that he'd talked to the guy just after they'd arrived and advised the man not to move around too much because it could be very dangerous for him and that the medics would arrive soon, but the guy with the green shirt just stared at him with a blank expression on his face. The car was totally wrecked, so they had to call in more emergency workers to get some help moving the car and also to search for this guy. After a few minutes, when more emergency people arrived to help, they moved the car and were completely shocked by what they saw. The man with the green shirt was pinned below the steering wheel. The 2 policemen were dumbfounded because they had seen the man walk out from behind the tree when they first arrived, and he couldn't have entered the car, but if he did, they surely would have noticed because the door was blocked and opening it would have created sounds. They searched for the photo and found that the guy with the green shirt was the same man as the guy who was below the steering wheel. Although the picture of the guy was blurry, they were sure that this was the man who was in the accident. They investigated and found out that the guy was driving fast because his wife was due to give birth that night. This happened to my husband, Jack, a year ago. We had a very happy marriage. He was a nice and sweet husband to me, like a cotton candy, and at the same time, a strong man capable of defeating a lion. However, I don't remember when it began, but he was getting wasting away. Every morning, he woke up screaming and asked me if this was a dream, almost every 10 minutes. And before he fell asleep every night, he shouted like,
"Oh God, please Jesus, protect me!"
even though he had no religion. One day, when I asked him what's wrong with him, he whispered in my ear after looking around with a frightened face.
"For the last few days, the same man's been chasing me in my dreams."
His voice was trembling. I told him, "Hey, Mr. Tough Guy, it's just a dream. What's so scary about it?" Suddenly, his eyes got hugely dilated and he got out of breath. And he said,
"You know the guy next door, Jacob? He died the other day in his sleep of a heart attack, right? Well, the night before his death, I was being chased by that man in the dream. And I fled to Jacob's house, and that man, I saw him entering Jacob's room."
"Honey, what do you mean?" I asked. Then Jack said,
"Jacob was killed by that man."
He started sobbing like a 10-year-old kid. A few days later, while waking up screaming again early in the morning, he fell out of bed. Then he suddenly rushed out of the room. I shouted, running after him, "Honey, you are at home. You are safe." And Jack shouted back,
"No! This is a dream! You are not my wife, you devil! I'm jumping out of this apartment and going back to the real world!"
and he ran to the window and put his foot on the windowsill. I ran to him at full speed and slapped him so hard in the face. Then he finally said with a shocked look,
"Oh, yes, you are real."
I asked what's really happening to him, and he said the man, this time, chased him to our house. According to Jack, the man in his dream was about 12 feet tall and his head took up almost half of the height. He had 3 pupils each and violet skin. When he opened his mouth, Jack saw hundreds of disgusting black teeth. He was in a black suit and his legs looked like goats. When Jack shouted to him,
"You're just a nightmare!"
the man said,
"I am death,"
laughing shrilly. However, Jack said he was laughing with a crying face, which made him look creepier. While he was laughing, those hundreds of teeth made some ear-splitting sound, like hundreds of metal pieces scratching each other. And Jack's eardrums were so painful, as if those were about to be torn. Extremely frightened, Jack started running away as fast as his legs could carry him. The man also started running after Jack, shouting like,
"Oh, death! Death is beautiful! Beautiful death!"
It made Jack extremely paralyzed by fear. Jack's legs were wobbling and turning to jelly. He kept falling down on the ground, but tried to run and run as if his life completely depended on it. Finally, the man came up to him right under his nose and opened his mouth, shouting,
"Death is beautiful!"
At that moment, Jack bit his own tongue and, luckily, woke up from the dream. When he was awakened, he was terribly bleeding from the tongue and taken to the hospital right away. But even the doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. After long hesitation, we this time visited a shaman. However, as soon as the shaman saw Jack, she shouted with a deathly pale face, "You met him!" I cried on my knees and desperately begged for help. Clicking her tongue, she closed her eyes. After thinking deeply for a while, she opened her lips to speak. "Listen, this is what you must do from tonight. First, sleep in somewhere else you've never been. You must not tell anybody where you are, even your family or friends. Second, before going to bed, put on clown makeup. He must not recognize your face. Third, if he chases you in your dream, just run away. That's the only way you can survive. Do not go into any other person's place, otherwise innocent one will be killed because of you. Run until you reach the river or sea. He cannot swim. Don't even think of going up to a high place. He is faster on the stairs. After saying like this, she kicked us out. That night, Jack went to a nearby motel and slept with clown makeup on. Surprisingly, the man didn't appear in the dream on that night. The next day, Jack was deeply relieved and trying to sleep in the motel again. However, that night, Jack had a dream again of the man. He opened the door and entered the room, but he didn't recognize Jack in clown makeup. Tilting his head, he just kept staring at Jack. Jack slowly got out of there and kept walking away to escape, and the man also followed him for hours, still confused. Then, all of a sudden, he shouted,
There you are!
And started running after him at full speed. My husband had to run away again all night long. That way, there was no way to stop the nightmare. Next morning, Jack became unable to walk on his own and was taken to hospital again. The doctor said,
Geez, how long did you run? All your leg joints and muscles are broken. You're gonna have to use a wheelchair for quite a while.
The next night, Jack had to run on a wheelchair for his life in the dream, and when he woke up in the next morning, he became unable to move his arms at all because the arm muscles were entirely broken. Now, there was no option for him but to be hospitalized. Since that day, Jack desperately had struggled to stay awake. Although the doctor kept asking to sleep and rest for recovery, he just drank a lot of coffee to keep himself awake. He had stayed up all through the night every day. On the third day without sleep, his health looked far worse. He even started kicking up a rumpus in the hospital, freaking out with fear and anxiety. My poor Jack begged the doctor to stop dreaming, on his knees. The doctor injected a tranquilizer, saying,
This should put you in a deep sleep, without dreaming.
Jack grabbed the doctor by the collar and screamed,
If I sleep, I'm going to die!
drifting off to sleep. Looking at him asleep, the doctor said,
Ma'am, your husband is severely mentally deranged. He will receive treatment in the psych ward tomorrow.
Then he left the room. And the next day, just an unbelievable thing happened. In the morning, Jack was found on the floor right next to his bed. He was dead, and his body was already ice cold. He was curled up as if he was attacked hard by something. And what I found on his body was hundreds of red spots, and all of the joints of his arms and legs terribly broken. His tongue was also cut off. The doctor got embarrassed because he could not find a single clue, because Jack was healthy and didn't have any illness, as even I had no idea what killed him. One thing I could think of was that dream. Until now, there are so many questions in my mind that I could never solve. Who was that man, and why? For what reason he showed up in Jack's dream? Everything still remains mysterious. If you see this man in your dream, run. Just run away. And never, ever get caught. My name is Lexi, and I am 32 years old, but this happened when I was 19. I was very skinny, and every boy wanted me, even though I had a boyfriend. Anyway, I was heading to Japan to meet my parents after a year, and after we had dinner at a restaurant, I decided to walk to my hotel, which is something that I regretted. My boyfriend was gonna surprise my parents by secretly coming a little bit after. As I was walking, my boyfriend said that he was boarding the plane. I was feeling excited because my boyfriend had never met them. As soon as I replied to him, 3 men in a black car rolled up next to me. One of them put their window down and said, "You wanna come party?" I said, "No thanks." but they continued to follow me. I decided to run, but couldn't go fast because of my heels. They parked their car in front of me and pushed me inside. I could not do anything since I'm only 5'4" and they were each about 6 foot tall. I passed out and woke up in some sort of cell where I heard girls my age screaming. I heard lots of smacking, so I thought I was going to get hit by them. Then my phone rang. It was my boyfriend, who was 21 and pretty well built. Then we shared locations, but a man came and took my phone. I just sat there, crying. Then 2 men opened my cell and took me to a man sitting on a chair. They put me on him as if he was gonna spank me. Then he lifted his hand and kept on hitting my ass. I told him to stop, but then he started hitting harder. Then, about an hour later, he stopped, and they took me back to a cell, and one of them lifted my sleeve. I asked him, "What are you doing?" Then 2 men held my arm, and he put a shot in me and quickly covered it. Seconds later, I could feel my body going numb. It was hard to do anything. Then I heard lots of gunshots. My boyfriend owned a gun, and I saw a man coming. It was my boyfriend, and he quickly carried me out of there and put me in his car, but we did not call the cops because if they found out my boyfriend shot them, he could get in extreme trouble. Now I'm 32, and I cannot thank my boyfriend enough for being there. It kills me to think what would have happened if my boyfriend hadn't planned on surprising my parents. Hi, my name is Natalie. I'm a 19-year-old female, and this incident occurred 2 years ago. This is by far the craziest thing that has happened in my life. It all started when I was walking home one night after eating at a restaurant with a friend of mine. It was around the end of the summer season and going into fall, so I was slightly shivering. You might be wondering why me, a young woman, is walking home all alone in the night with no one else around to accompany me. Well, I wasn't carrying anything close to value like a purse, so no immediate theft target besides me myself. Then again, I learned karate in a course of 4 years, so I thought I could put up a fight if I needed to. Anyways, I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I was very distracted smelling my armpit since it stank so much at that moment that I didn't notice someone in front of me with her back turned. We collided and I apologized. The person I bumped into was a girl who looked slightly older than me, maybe 2 years. When she first saw me, her expression glowed in awe. I asked her if she was okay. She said she was fine, introduced herself as Mia, and then randomly said that I looked pretty and how I had a nice outfit and jewelry. In my opinion, what I was wearing was nothing fancy, just casual. But hey, we all have our different opinions. To be specific, I was wearing a sleeveless plain white tank top, dark blue jeans that extended to my heels, and red running shoes. In fact, much like a cartoon character, I wore this outfit almost every day. Also, I know I am basically bragging here, but I was pretty attractive. I was slim and had wavy, shoulder-length brown hair. "Thanks," I said, rubbing my hand on my other arm shyly in response. Lastly, I was wearing no jewelry at all. I may have found out the reason why, and that is the way she was talking. It sounded like she drank some booze, but not too much. And only then I started smelling it from her, in addition to her not walking that normally. As drunk as she was, she didn't look threatening at the same time. From what I can tell from my point of view, at least, I assume that she was a lesbian. Not that I'm against lesbians, for anyone who is curious, but at the same time, I wasn't comfortable being in a full relationship with a female, but just being a friend. She asked me if I wanted to come with her and spend the night at her place. I didn't want to be rude right away, so I politely said, maybe soon, but not tonight. I was down with having another friend, as she looks nice and innocent. That's when stuff suddenly started hitting the fan out of nowhere. It all started as soon as we were done exchanging our contact information with each other when I saw something moving behind Mia. Before I could even think what it was an extremely large hooded man dressed all in black with his face mostly covered by his hood charging at Mia. I then saw him wielding a large butcher's knife. At that point, Mia seemed to sober up a bit, screaming after turning around and realizing the predicament she was in. Before I could do something, I watched in horror as he grabbed her and started thrusting the knife into her right arm and started to violently cut it off, and unfortunately, he succeeded as I heard the dreaded noise of the severed arm hitting the ground with a splat. I knew I had to think fast before things went from bad to worse. The man didn't seem to really notice me when I first saw him, so I quickly tackled him to the ground, pinned him, then punched him in the face a few times. I grabbed the knife from him and threw it a good distance from him. I saw his face bleeding pretty good from my blows. I wasted no time as I told the girl she could come with me to my house so she can be safe, and we both immediately sprinted for my place. Amazingly enough, after what has happened to her, it seemed that the alcohol she drank numbed the pain quite a bit, so she was still able to run under her own power. After what seemed like forever, taking a few detours and looking back to make sure we weren't being followed, we finally reached my place. We got inside, with Mia still rapidly bleeding. My parents were home, and they were really scared and confused as to what was going on. I told them I can explain later, and that for now they need to call 911. I told them the location of the attack, which luckily I still remembered where it happened. A few moments later, an ambulance came along with a police car. Mia was taken to the hospital, while, amazingly, the man was actually found unconscious with all the evidence of the crime occurring still there. The blood, the arm, the knife, everything. So it was easy for police to piece together what happened and arrest the man. Since then, Mia has made a full recovery in the hospital, and we ended up being good friends. She even started to take karate classes herself. Despite that, she still wanted me to walk with her to have each other's backs. What can be learned from all this in the end? I suggest that you should always have your guard up in a situation like this, and to just always have something with you to defend yourself with. Stay safe out there. You can almost never know what can happen out there.
So I'm not exactly sure where to post this, but I feel like this might be the best spot for it. I recently moved down to an apartment building all the way up to the top floor. My balcony is at the back of the building, and the view is mostly trees, but there's some houses and a street directly behind the apartment building, so I can see that too, and I hope that makes sense. I usually sit out on my balcony at night, getting high and listening to music. At night, the view is just darkness aside from the house porch lights and the road lit up by a street light. Most of the road view is covered by trees, but I can see a good amount of it. There's also no light for my balcony, so at night I just sit in the dark, aside from the light coming from my phone. So anyway, I was sitting there at around 10 p.m. or so, like I usually do, and I noticed movement from the road. When I looked down, I saw someone running down the road, like really fast. From my distance, it looked like this person was running faster than any human should. I was just watching when this person just stopped under a street lamp. Under the light, I could tell this person was a man. I also realized this person was now looking up at me. I got nervous, but I didn't move because I thought I could just be overthinking and maybe this guy wasn't actually looking directly at me. How could he? My phone wasn't on, so I was pretty much sitting in complete darkness. Could he really see me from all the way down there? I just kept sitting there, hoping the guy would leave, but then I saw him waving at me. Now I knew he was looking at me. I was too uncomfortable to do anything. I couldn't even go back inside. I just sat there, getting increasingly nervous. My thoughts started running wild. I thought this guy might find my apartment and try to break in. I also thought that they would somehow just sprint forward and climb up the building to get to me or something. But as I kept staring at this guy waving at me, a sudden feeling of dread came over me. That was when I started grabbing my things to go back inside. But then I saw that he stopped waving. He reached both of his arms out to the side and started swaying his body side to side, bending his knees as he moved and wiggling his arms around like a weird dance move. At this point, I was incredibly unsettled and just wanted to go back inside, but I was also slightly intrigued in a way, and I guess I wanted to see what he might do next. Soon, the feelings of dread and unease took over and continued closing up all of my stuff, and I went inside. There was a window in the room next to the balcony where you could see down to the same area, so I peeked outside trying to stay hidden behind the wall. I saw this guy still moving around, side to side, but he soon stopped and I saw him just start booking it down the road again. I made sure my front door was locked and I went back to my room, locking the bedroom door as well. The bedroom window looks out to the same direction, so I made sure that the guy was gone and closed my curtains. I didn't really sleep that night. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that I had. This happened a couple of nights ago and I haven't seen this guy since then. I've still been sitting out in the balcony, but I've been getting really paranoid when I'm out there at night, so I don't stay out for as long as I did. I don't really know what to make of this whole thing. I don't know who that guy was, or maybe what he was. I get really uncomfortable and paranoid when I think about that night, like I'm back in that moment feeling those exact feelings again. Also, since then, I get occasional waves of dread. Like at times throughout the day, I get the feeling that I'm being watched. I hope this feeling goes away soon, and I'm really hoping I don't see that guy ever again.
I work as a sculptor. I also adore Christmas. I carved many of the statues in my yard, including Rudolph and Santa. Every day is Christmas at my home. I used to offer prayers in front of a sizable Christmas stocking statue in the living room every Christmas. Santa Claus, I will live a good life. Give me a really expensive gift. Every Christmas when I was a child, my father would dress up as Santa and give me amazing presents. Every year I wait for Christmas to come around. I currently live alone because my father passed away. Even though I'm an adult, Christmas time makes me feel like a kid again. And I offer up prayers in front of the statue of the Christmas stocking. Santa Claus, please make sure to give me a pricey gift. Of course, the Christmas stockings will be empty the next morning. No one can give me a present now that I live alone in my home. Just like that, I fall asleep with a sweet dream. Christmas morning was the following day. When I woke up, I have been taken completely by surprise with the abundance of cash in the living room. I initially questioned my eyes, but after coming to, I looked. They were actual money. The living room was piled high with money. I was so shocked that I assumed this was a practical joke. However, nobody around me had this much money. It wasn't fake money either. I was so shocked that it took me a while to collect myself. Then I noticed something in my Christmas stocking statue that drew my attention. I moved slowly closer to have a better look. There was a sizable object wrapped in a paper like a present. When I removed the wrapper, I recoiled in disbelief. What was inside was a dead body, a woman's body that appeared to have been mutilated. I also saw a tiny message that was attached to it. My hands shook as I retrieved the message. Then I read it.
Merry Christmas. It is a gift from Santa Claus. I'll offer you 5 million in cash. However, only if you cope with this woman. How do you feel? It's a really wonderful gift, don't you think? You better not cry. It's a reward that only good kids get.
I was shocked and was at a loss for words and felt as though my brain was damaged. I was unable to look away from that enormous pile of cash as the anxiety crept in. That's right. Money also saw the emergence of greed and selfishness. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. Then, in front of my eyes, a panorama of many dream scenarios with sports cars, luxurious homes, and yachts emerged. I was tearing my hair out in pain. But how should I get rid of this body? Never in my life I have been giving anything like this. Even though I'm aware of it, I will undoubtedly suffer consequences if I acquiesce to this body. I felt like my brain was going to explode with all kinds of thoughts. I shouted while glancing up at the ceiling. God, Why do you torture me to the suffering on a joyous Christmas day? I debated for a while before picking up the phone and dialing 911. But the phone abruptly rang at that very time. Unknown was the phone number. I heard an old man's voice when I got it.
Happy holidays. Did you enjoy your gift?
I yelled, "Murderer!"
You are the murderer who killed this woman from now onwards.
I yelled him to stop this nonsense. He spoke.
I simply gave you what you requested. If you're embarrassing yourself, you'll be wrapped up and giving as a present to someone else. Do you comprehend?
I yelled, "Santa Claus can't even enter my home because I don't even have a chimney. Do you think I'll be scared of you?" The porch bell then abruptly sounded. I glanced at the intercom in shock. A man dressed as Santa stepped in front of my door and said,
Santa can get in every child's house. Just like this.
My front door's lock beeped after a bit, and then it clicked open. My heart dropped for a split second when I caught a glimpse of the front door partially open. A hand then slipped through the gaping space and waved. Blood was all over his hands. As my hands started to shake, I hurriedly spoke. "What the hell are you looking for?"
Between the two of us, keep this a secret. You're a good boy, therefore I think you'll do a great job. Remember that Santa is always keeping an eye on you.
He hung up and closed the door. I collapsed on the ground and started crying. Why did I witness this? I have been disorganized and absent-minded all day. I ultimately came to the conclusion that I had no choice but to take this job. But because I'm still young, I didn't want to serve time in jail. But I also didn't want to be horribly slain by this killer. I made the decision to first see if this money was fake or not. I verified that the bills were genuine by taking some cash to the bank. Then I spent a lot of time debating on how to get rid of this body. And after giving it a lot of thought, I succeeded. I was wrong about how simple it was. I began constructing a stunning golden Santa Claus monument for the yard, then placed the body inside. It turned into my greatest achievement, the ideal of beauty and the ideal secret. Across time, visitors to the statue started to gather from all over the neighborhood. Everyone was amazed. People traveled from long distances to admire my statue once I became famous. The crowd yelled that the statue appears to be alive and moving. They said that they have never seen a statue this realistic. Some even told me, "I can't believe you created a statue so exquisite. Your soul must have been sold to the devil." I scowled at him. After that day, I began to spend on the finest of things. I lived in a 5-star hotel every day, ate expensive food, wore luxurious clothing, drove a sports car, and attended parties every day. Everyone believed I was a wealthy, self-made individual, but nobody was aware of that unpleasant reality. I occasionally had the impression that someone was monitoring and following me. However, I didn't care and had fun. I was appreciative of that enigmatic Santa Claus. Christmas Eve night returned the following year. I received a call from a strange number. Once more, it was the old man's voice.
Wow, that statue is awesome. How were you able to get the body inside? Nobody took note? Really, I was impressed. I mean, let's work together going forward. From now on, I will pay you 1 million each corpse. How do you feel?
My shaking returned. This time the trembling was one of excitement rather than fear. Without realizing, I yelled, "Boss, I'll handle it. Please." He said, while grinning hysterically.
It's funny. From now on, we are all on the same side.
The following morning, when I got out of bed, I discovered a body enclosed in a Christmas stocking statue. Good. This time, what kind of statue should I create? I slapped myself when I finally noticed that I was grinning. Although I felt bad about it, I was powerless to stop myself from turning into a monster. Again, I created a magnificent statue and put the dead body inside. I created a statue this time that closely resembles the dead body's appearance. Once more, a bunch of people gathered to gaze in awe. Someone questioned me. After whom was this statue modeled? I want to see this model in person, please. They're not in this statue, is it? I kicked them out. I continued my wealthy life in that way. I was overjoyed. I fulfilled my goal. Everyone admired me and complimented me on my coolness. Santa heard my prayer. He actually gave me a gift. Of course, there were occasions when I worried that everything might eventually be revealed. I questioned myself. Is there really an eternal secret in this world? I was unsure of the question. I always pray that I'll get presents for Christmas the following year. I'm hoping everyone else says a prayer to Santa, so Santa will pay attention to your prayers.
Merry Christmas to you all. Oh.
When I was 7 years old, my parents told my siblings and I that we were moving to a new house. It was exciting. I found out that the house was much bigger than the one we had at the time, which was great because I have a big family. For some details, the house was in more of a rural area, and it was close to a forest. We finished getting everything and everyone situated about a month after we bought the house, and we were all happy with it. I ended up sharing a room with my sister, who we'll call Bella, which her and I were fine with. In our room, there was a big window covering almost the whole wall. My bed was in front of it. I noticed something was a little odd when, after about 3 weeks of being situated, I would hear knocking on the window late at night. But I just blew it off as a bat or something. But I was mistaken. This would going on about every other day at around any time between 9 or 10 p.m. And I know I wasn't just hearing things because Bella would hear it too. And even my cat would get scared sometimes if he was sleeping on my bed. He would be sleeping on my stomach, but when he would hear that, he would get scared and curl against my chest. This actually made me feel safe, so I would be fine. A couple years would go by with the same thing happening. And when I was around 10, I would still hear the knocking, but I would also hear scratching. Not scratching like a mouse or anything, but scratching as if someone was dragging their nails against the window. This scared me, but every time I would look to see if something was there, it stopped. I would sleep next to my cat every night, but he eventually stopped sleeping with me because this would annoy him. And on top of that, Bella had gotten her own room, so I was all alone. I had gotten sick of it, and I was sad because my cat wouldn't snuggle with me. I told my parents eventually. "Oh, you're just imagining it. Just stop overeating," they said. This got me a little frustrated, but mostly sad because they just blew it off right away. I even started sleeping in the living room on the couch. This didn't help, though, because the knocking and scratching started happening in the living room. I even tried the bathroom that had no windows, but then I would hear it on the door. I would hear it wherever I would go to sleep. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. It was terrible. It got to the point where I wasn't sleeping because the noise would keep me up. As years would go by, there were more noises. By the time I was 12, I would hear knocking, scratching, slapping on the window, and even what sounded like kicking. I hated it. One day when I was 13, however, a whole week went by without any noise at all. A week turned into a month, and a month turned into a whole year. It was great. I would be way more energetic because I would get more sleep, and I was happier because my cat started to sleep on me again. Everyone could see a change in my personality, and they thought it was great, so no one ever asked me about anything. One afternoon, my younger brother, who I'll call Jack, and I were playing with a soccer ball in the backyard. We were just kicking it back and forth, messing around with each other, when I accidentally kicked the ball too hard and it went far into the forest. Jack and I both went to get it, but we couldn't see it or find it anywhere. But we were getting a little far away from our house, so I said that we should go back. "Wait, look," Jack said. I looked where he was pointing, and down a hill, we saw a little wood cabin with a man in the front yard, and he was holding our soccer ball. Jack said we should ask him for it back, but I felt a little uneasy about it. I said we should just go back, but while I was turning around, Jack ran down the hill, shouting, "Hey, you have our ball!" I had to chase after him, and once we were both down, we were in the man's yard. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was yours. It just rolled into my yard," the man said. He sounded really nice. I told him that I was sorry and that we were just playing and that I kicked it too far. He said it was fine and gave our ball back. He introduced himself as Tom. He looked to be in his late 40s or early 50s. He was tall and skinny, and he had short brown hair. He asked how old we were. That kind of made me uncomfortable, so I didn't answer. But without any hesitation, Jack said, "I'm 9 and she's 14. We live up there," as he pointed to our house. I looked at him with a concerned look because I thought he shouldn't be telling him that. There was a moment of silence when all of a sudden Tom said something that scared me, and I could tell it scared Jackson as well by the look of his face. He said, "Yeah, I know. I watch you guys outside sometimes." He snickered after he said this, which made me even more uncomfortable. I told him that we should get home because our parents are going to be wondering where we were. He sighed and then said it was fine. Jack and I both ran home, and we were both weirded out by that guy. Once we got home, he kept apologizing, and I kept saying it wasn't his fault that Tom guy was a creep. We decided not to tell our parents because we thought that they would get mad at us for going into the forest. Now that I think about it, that was stupid. About 1 week after that, I was about to fall asleep with my cat when all of a sudden, knock, knock, knock. I heard the knocks again. I couldn't believe it. A whole year without that terrible noise, and now it's back? I was so scared. This kept going on, so I looked up, and this wasn't a surprise, but it stopped. And when I looked away, it started up again. My cat left my room, which made me even more scared because now I was alone. I was fed up, so I decided to go outside and look if something or someone was there. I got up, walked to the back door, and went outside. It was about 10 p.m., so it was really dark. I don't think to get a flashlight, so I was just trying to rely on the moonlight. All of a sudden, I felt someone grab me from behind and cover my mouth. This terrified me, so I kept kicking. Whoever grabbed me wouldn't let me go and was carrying me into the forest. I cried and kept trying to think of what to do. I thought that I should bite his hand, so I did. He yelled as he dropped me. I then kicked his shin as hard as I could. I then looked at his face. I noticed that it was Tom. "You brat," he said as he tried to grab me again. I started running back home and screaming as loud as I could. As I got closer to my house, I noticed that my dad had come outside with his shotgun and a flashlight. Thankfully, he saw me and started running towards me. He then saw Tom and told him to stay away or he would shoot him. My mom then came outside and I ran to her and I told her to call the police. My dad told Tom that we were calling the cops and to stay where he was. Tom then threw a big rock that he had in his hand right at my dad's head. My dad fell over and Tom ran back to his house. When Tom was nowhere to be seen, that's when we heard 2 police sirens. I told them what happened and how Tom had ran back to his house. More police went to his house while 2 stayed with me and my parents. Eventually, my whole family woke up and came outside. All of a sudden, we heard a gunshot, and then another. In total, we heard 9 gunshots. Once the cops came back, they talked to my parents. I didn't listen, but my mom told me the important stuff. She told me that once 2 police got there, they broke down the door, only to see Tom sitting on the floor with his back turned to the wall. When they told him to stand up and to put his hands behind his back, Tom stood up and quickly turned around and shot one of the police officers. He kept shooting wildly at the police officers when one of them was able to shoot him. Tom had killed 1 police officer and injured 3. However, Tom himself had died. The police said that when they searched his home after he was down, they found pictures all over his walls. The pictures were of me, Jack, Bella, my mom, my dad, and so many other of my siblings, along with some of many young girls and boys. It was horrible to hear. The police also said that they had found a total of 3 dead bodies in what they thought must have been his room. I just knew that he was the one who was knocking on my window all these years. I was scared to know that it was actually a man who was doing it, but I'm relieved that it has now stopped. My family and I still live in the same house, and my cat has gotten used to sleep with me again. I'm really happy that things have gone back to normal. Sometimes I still have dreams about Tom, though, about his chilling smile and about how he would make noises on my window. Knocking, scratching. It's horrible. I would hate for anyone else to have to go through this.
The happiest couple I've ever met, the couple to give hope to anyone who didn't believe in love, came crashing down from their happy, cloudless blue sky. And it all began with an old, bitter woman. I arrived at JC's house 5 p.m. sharp. She's always obsessing with time, questioning why you're a minute late or a minute early, as if she's a detective and you're in her interrogation room. A young woman with pitch black hair, dark clothing, a nose ring and a few tattoos to go with it all. Her home decorated not too differently from herself, with pumpkins sitting on the porch in September, black wind chimes, and a very welcoming rug at the doorstep that reads, "Leave now." I felt special being the only person she trusted. Still, it took me a few knocks and even a reluctant ring of the doorbell to get her to answer. "Hey," I began, ending the awkward stare down she always initiated when that door opened. "Ralph," she said, smiling. "How you doing?" "Good. Good. Yourself?" She took a moment to trace the floor with her left foot. "Good. JC and I had planned a movie night. Well, as long as the movie wasn't too long, as she never allows anyone, even me, inside her home after 9:30 p.m. My nostrils were introduced to a scent of fresh batch of cinnamon cookies. I had hoped that they were for me, for us, but JC brought back a bowl of popcorn and soda for the movie instead. Which was fine. I certainly wasn't going to complain and then end up losing her trust for the next 2 decades. The movie ended. We thought Halloween 2 was okay. I gave myself a little tour while JC went upstairs to find another movie. I was glad she was willing to watch another, that she was beginning to open up and let her friends back into her life. I guess the burden from all the loneliness she's been experiencing the past few years finally got to her. My eye caught a picture framed above the fireplace of JC and her ex-boyfriend, Tyler. No one knows what happened between them. All we know is that one day they were together and the next day they weren't. After the breakup, Tyler simply disappeared and no one's seen him since. And the aftermath shows. It shows in JC's eyes. "Saw 4? JC waved the DVD from atop the stairs, awaiting my response. "Sure." Somehow, over and despite the gore of Saw 4, she slowly drifted into a deep sleep. I wasn't really paying much attention to the movie anyway, so that was fine. And it was about time for me to leave soon. I made myself over to the kitchen for a glass of water. I noticed the time, 9:15 p.m. I thought I'd better get going soon, even if JC wasn't going to wake up in the next 15 minutes. I told myself I would wake her up before I left out of respect for her rules. I noticed a tray of cinnamon cookies on the counter and figured she wouldn't notice one missing anyway. I looked down the hallway before turning the sink on to see if JC's still asleep. I didn't want to make too much of a noise washing my hands, but it wasn't the sound of running water that woke her up. It was my scream. As I washed my hands, I made out a face of a man in the window in front of the sink. I jumped back in shock, with JC running into the kitchen with questions. What happened? She demanded to know. Call the cops. I think someone tried to break into your house. I saw him through the window by the sink. What did he look like? I don't know. Definitely a man though. I think he was white. She burst out in a sudden laughter. No more movies tonight, Ralph. Time to go. She didn't believe me, or she wasn't taking it seriously. I'm not leaving you here. You're not staying here alone. I'll be fine. Not happening, I sternly interrupted. JC finally noticed the time. Her expression suddenly turned serious, and she uncrossed her arms. Oh, no, Ralph. You have to go. Now. I poked my head to the side, looking out the kitchen. I saw the same men through the living room window this time. Holy shit! Call the cops, he's right there! JC looked back. She saw him too. A very loud and violent bang against the door rumbled throughout the house. She ran for the front door to make sure it was locked. Except, she actually ran to the front door so I wouldn't look through the peephole. Move! What are you doing? We gotta see this guy's face so we can describe him. Ralph, what? Move! Ralph, please. Confusion hit me. Why won't you move, JC? Tears ran down her face, followed by trails of black eyeshadow. She seemed hopeless, like she had just given up, like she was finally ready to tell me something. Ralph, do you remember that old woman? The one Tyler and I. She dried her face with her sweater. The one me and Tyler visited. Yeah, okay, what about her? JC and Tyler were as open-minded as they come. They dipped their toes into diverse pools of knowledge. Knowledge in religion, culture, science, you name it. They studied Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and anything else that sparked their interest. Which is why, at the request of a former friend, they decided to meet with a woman who claimed to possess certain abilities. A very old, serious, grey-haired woman whose shoulders almost met the back of her neck. This woman lived up in the mountains, in absolute isolation. Although open-minded and always willing to listen, JC and Tyler couldn't help but laugh at the woman, who claimed to be one of the last people on Earth who knew how to practice real witchcraft. The woman did not react mercifully at their mocking, and supposedly proved to JC and Tyler that she was in fact very real. It was a running joke that JC would tell us from time to time, even when Tyler left. They broke up immediately after meeting that old woman. But no one thought that it was their reasoning. JC! She looked up at me, still leaning against the door. What about the woman? What the hell does she have to do with anything that's happening right now? The tears started again. Then another very, very loud bang against the door. It was so strong that it rattled the locks and even shook some picture frames on the wall out of place. Holy shit! Okay, JC, move, please! I moved her away from the door to look through the peephole. Ralph, please! I saw the stuff of nightmares. A man on the ground, standing on all fours. That is, standing on his legs and hands. His crooked head looking up at the door, shifting fast, shifting inhumanely fast. His eyes were pitch black, like JC's hair, and he was completely naked, with his ribcage poking against his skin. He was standing so close to the door that I was able to see every little detail. Then he, or it, opened its mouth to reveal cat-like teeth. I jumped back as it began to bang its head against the door again. I looked at JC, waiting for an explanation. She just looked back at me, as if expecting me to figure out myself, like I was supposed to know. Then she ran to the kitchen and she came back with a tray of cinnamon cookies she had baked earlier. She placed her hand on the doorknob and looked at me. They're still his favorite. What are you doing? Don't open the door! She opened the door and walked outside, closing it behind herself. I looked through the peephole, then ran to the living room to get a better look through the window. She was feeding it the cookies and petting it on the head. It rubbed against her legs. She kissed it on its forehead while it consumed everything she placed in front of it. Then, in a sight that made me jump back from the window, it suddenly ran off into the woods, moving incredibly fast. I just stared at JC as she walked back inside. She froze by the staircase, still waiting for me to say something. By then, it just hit me. Tyler always did like those cookies.
So, I'm a big horror fangirl. I'm 20 years old, and over the past year, I've been collecting from the figures to the mask to even life size. I won't say this story was terrifying or anything, but to me, it basically saved me. I'll try and make it simple. I'm a big Michael Myers fan, and last October I bought a life-size figure of him. Oh, and a Chucky doll too. And not just one of the cheap ones, the replica-looking ones. Some may call me crazy, but what's not to love about horror, right? I keep everything stored away at the moment, apart from the life-size Michael, which he stands around 6 foot. He's not a cheap-looking guy either. He looks like the real deal. The replica mask, real coveralls with blood, and even a knife too. He stands in my room right next to my bed. And even though it used to creep me out seeing a dark black figure in my room, I eventually got used to it. Like to the point where I actually felt comfortable around him. I don't move him anywhere else though, as nobody in the house really liked him. Anyway, now that that's all out of the way, here's the thing that happened. So last year when I received him, I was home alone watching films downstairs when I then heard a thud upstairs. I froze, as I didn't really know what to think. I slowly got up and went up to my room, and then instantly heard the thuds from the downstairs door. I had absolutely no clue what the hell was going on because I was the only one there. I quietly sat in the dark as I didn't keep the lights on, and I listened. I heard what sounded like men talking, and then I realized someone had came in and that I didn't lock the door. The TV was also left on, so they had to have known I was there. Anyways though, there I was sitting face to face with the Michael figure in the dark. I heard the footsteps coming up the stairs to my room while I sat in the corner with my head spinning. I felt like I wanted to pass out. I even started to sweat a little. My door then opened and there I'd seen a hooded figure walk in and head straight towards me. He had something in his hand, something sharp, like a pocket knife. I was leaning against the cold wall more and more, wanting to grab something, until out of nowhere, Michael's arm then started moving. Bear in mind it was still dark, so this guy had no clue that Michael was behind him until he heard it move. I also want to add that it wasn't an electrical noise, it was the material of the arm rubbing together. The man then turned around and instantly yelled, and I mean I've never seen a man run so fast in his life. The man then started yelling, "Go, get the hell out of here," to some other guy that was in a van outside. I stood up and watched them as they drove off. I then noticed a crack in my window. Obviously these freaks were throwing rocks at my window, possibly to distract me, but I didn't care about that. I turned around and just stared at Michael because I really had no clue that he could even move. I started investigating and then realized he was an animatronic the entire time. But I was thinking he moved just at that exact moment and basically saved my life that night. I can even laugh about it now because of how scared the guy was. I got my window repaired and did mention to the police that I had a break-in, but there was really nothing they could do about it. But it was still reported just in case they tried anywhere else. Luckily nothing was taken, as there was really nothing valuable downstairs. Obviously this Michael Myers looked like a real person, and anyone that looks at it, especially in the dark, gets the creeps by it. I know it sounds insane and maybe even funny, but this incident really happened, and I'm so damn thankful that I have him in my room. I never even once thought it would save my life like this, especially if he never moved. I always wonder how he moved anyway. I mean, it happened all by itself. Was it some kind of coincidence? I'll never know. But thank you, Michael. God only knows what that guy would have done to me if you weren't here.
It happened in December 2018. I've been running a pizza store for a long time in a small neighborhood. I got an order call around 12 p.m., which came from an apartment building B, number 201, which was located in a remote area. It was almost the closing time of the store, so I was sure there will be no more orders. And to save about $5 for the delivery fees, I decided to deliver it myself. When I rode my motorcycle following the mobile phone navigation, I saw apartment A written on a fairly old wall, so I thought the building next to it would be building B. So I stopped my motorcycle nearby and went into it. Since the building was so old and unmanaged, the numbers on the doors were worn out, and all the sensors did not light up while I was going up the stairs. However, I know that many old apartments are often out of light, so without thinking about it, I just turned on my cell phone flashlight and continued going up the stairs. There was an amulet attached to room 201. And reading those Chinese characters, it wasn't that important meaning. And I checked the number to see if the number was correct, knocked lightly on the door, and heard a woman's answer. And I heard the sound of people standing up. Then the footsteps entered somewhere from the living room. I felt like I could hear the floor creaking well when she walked, maybe because it was an old apartment. They don't have to look for the wallet because they paid in advance. I was wondering at first, but decided to wait a little longer, just in case something happened inside. So I waited in the dark for 3 more minutes, but there was no sign of people coming out. I knocked again and rang the doorbell, but after that, no answer was heard from the house. And beyond the door and upstairs, I could hear laughter from some kind of entertainment programs on TV. I waited to see if the person inside went to the bathroom and knocked again, but no one didn't answer. I couldn't wait any longer, so I called the number I got. Fortunately, the phone was connected quickly. "Pizza delivery. Please open the door." It seemed that the person who had ordered wanted to give her children at home for a late-night snack while working overtime at work. "I'm working outside right now. Our apartment is divided into A, B section, and A2, B2 section." "I think you went to the wrong apartment. People often get confused. The A2 and B2 buildings will be demolished soon, so no one lives there right now." When I heard that no one lives in building A2 and B2, the TV sound heard beyond the door and upstairs suddenly stopped. When I see other scary stories, usually the TV sound would have become louder, or something would have run down from upstairs, but I just could feel the cold coming up my ankle at the same time as the sound was cut off. I said okay and hung up the phone and came down the stairs with a flashlight on my cell phone. It was only the second floor, but the cold came up to my back neck as I was going down and, surprisingly, disappeared as soon as I came outside. When I came outside and looked up, all the lights in the building were turned off. I mean, the lights of 201 and 301 were literally turned on at first. I wanted to go back right away, but I had to complete the delivery anyway, so I walked around the building for a long time and finally found Building B. The apartment's lobby was lit up and seemed that people were living it there. And when I knocked on the door at 201, a grandmother and 2 children opened the door right away and took the pizza. Because I left my motorcycle there, I had to pass in front of Building A2 again. But there was only silence, as if nothing had happened. What were the answers, TV, and laughter that I heard in Building A2? Sometimes I get goosebumps when I think of that day, even now.
This happened back in 2012 when I was still attending college. Me and a few friends of mine opted to band together and rent out a one-bedroom apartment near the campus. We were a bunch of party animals back then, and we wanted our own place, so we could indulge in that lifestyle without worrying about our parents or the school's administration. The apartment complex was located in a rather unsavory part of town. The cops were called out there at least once a week to break up fights or to respond to reports of break-ins. All we ever did there was shower and sleep. Having to overhear domestic disputes and arguing through the walls was just part of the deal. One night my roommates went to a party while I stayed behind to study for an upcoming exam. Aside from some Tupac playing somewhere in the upper levels, things were pretty quiet. It was around 11 p.m. when I heard a strange sound coming from the hallway outside the front door. It sounded like a large metal object being dragged across the concrete floor. There was also a muffled noise, like someone was saying something, although I couldn't quite make out any words. This went on for about 10 minutes, before there came a loud smashing sound. It was at this point that I got up and made my way over to the peephole. At first I didn't see anything, so I just waited to see if anyone would pass by my door. About a minute later, a figure came into view and stood between my door and the door opposite. It was a Caucasian male. Now I will list 3 things that instantly made every alarm bell in my head go off. The man wasn't wearing a shirt and was completely drenched in sweat. There was a large axe in the man's right hand that he was dragging behind him. And last but not least, this deranged individual had on a black leather gas mask that completely hid his face. I was awestruck. This is the kind of thing that you see in low-budget horror movies. This kind of shit doesn't happen in real life. It was a complete shock to the system. As if reading my mind, a creepy, muffled voice then began singing.
Come with me, Hail Mary, run quick, see. What do we have here now? Do you wanna ride or die? La da da da, la 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 la.
As soon as the man finished the verse, he lifted his left leg and heaved the axe into my door. The movement was so fast, it caused me to topple backward. As soon as I scrambled to my feet, I heard another voice from further down the hallway.
Hey, what the fuck are you doing?
I rushed back to the peephole. The masked man was now gone. To the left of my front door was a fire escape, where he was able to make a quick getaway. I then saw the apartment's security guard step into view with his taser drawn. Hey, do you want me to call the police? I shouted through the door.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I'm going back outside to cut him off.
I immediately called the police and explained the situation to them. Unfortunately, the masked man managed to evade both the security guard and the police. The complex was surrounded by a small forest, and there was just too many ways for him to escape. After the lease was up, I moved out of that hellhole. A lunatic pacing up and down the hallway outside my door, wearing a gas mask and dragging an axe behind him, while singing a creepy-ass rendition of a Tupac song, was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a terrifying experience, but I can look back on it now and laugh. I hope you've enjoyed my story. And stay safe out there, guys.
This happened when I was 13 years old. I lived in India with my parents and my grandparents in a very old house which was nearly 100 years old. My aunt and my uncle used to visit me to that house. We have CCTV footage in our house as the area is a little dangerous. The house has a terrace, which is from the first floor where my aunt and uncle stayed. Anyways, one day when I came to home from walking my 11-year-old Labrador, I saw that everybody in the house were arguing and yelling. I ignored it and went to see my friends. The next day, I was surprised when I saw the same fight continuing when I returned from meeting my girlfriend. I thought it was a reoccurring fight, so I ignored it too, and I went and did my homework. The next day when I woke up, I had the most chilling part of my life. My dog was dead, and a guy was beaten to death by someone inside our house. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't as the scene was very horrifying. The head was smashed and the blood was in a pool. I woke up my parents and I yelled in top of my lungs. My dad called 100, which is the police number in India. The police came at 5 minutes, and they took the body in the ambulance which came with the police car. One cop began to ask questions to us, and they found no weapon or tool lying nearby. The most chilling part is that the police found nobody in the CCTV footage coming and going outside of our home. A guy jumped into our corridor and my dog barked at him. He stabbed the dog with a dagger, and when he went near our gate, he was pushed by someone who was not there in the camera, and he was beaten to death. He was moving as if someone was beating him. Then he passed away. My parents and I went to a Shiva temple near our house in our car, and we saw the priest. The priest came to our house and performed some mantras and looked at us and said, "She is very angry. She is guarding you." We looked at the priest confused. Then what he said was very chilling. Turns out a 15-year-old girl was staying in our house before it was sold to us, and she was brutally raped by the guy who got beaten. I was shocked from that instant. We moved out of the house. We never went to the house again.
My older brother dated a ghost for 2 years. He still doesn't know this. Rather, he is still in denial of the fact that he dated a ghost. He went to see a Buddhist monk and a shaman, was exorcised, and went to a mental hospital. It took him 2 years to get the ghost off of him with all that happening. He could finally break up with her after that. But he couldn't accept the breakup and hurt himself out of rage, resulting in his admission to a psychiatric ward. He is still looking for her, but she can never come back, as she was sent to another world. The memory goes back 2 years ago. My brother was an ordinary man, and he was popular among women with his good looks. He had good grades at school and was athletic and sociable. He was a good guy that anyone would like, until that incident happened. My brother had an ordinary life, dating girls of his age like others, but all that changed one day. Our family went through a huge crisis due to our dad's business failing. We moved to another house after packing everything up. The new home was very spacious and seemed too great for its low price. There was one odd thing. The day before my dad signed the contract for the house, my dad's mom, that is my grandmother, had a dream, a terrifying dream. In the dream, Grandma followed us when we were entering the house. And once she entered, all of the family was weeping and staring at her. The scene was very spooky to her, so Grandma called Dad right away. But we didn't have another choice as there was no house available at a lower price than this, so we decided to move into the house. We thought nothing terrible could happen and considered Grandma's dream just a silly dream. That was when it started. After a week since we moved in, my brother began to act weird. He started to talk to himself in his room. I first thought he was on the phone with his new girlfriend. He was talking in such a sweet and soft voice, just like talking to a girlfriend. Every time I ran into him in the living room, he looked delighted with cheeks flushed with joy. I thought to myself, he must have started dating. Good for him. But one day, that shocking thing happened. I went into my brother's room to ask him to go exercise with me. He was talking to someone in a gentle voice, but wasn't on the phone. He was talking with his hands posed as if he was hugging an invisible person. I was so shocked and shouted to ask what was he doing. He replied, "Oh, you've never met my girlfriend before. Say hi. This is Mia." I told him to stop messing around. To my surprise, his hands were posed as if he was really hugging someone, and his natural pose really made me feel like there was someone there, and there were his nonchalant face and tone. My brother continued, "Why are you ignoring Mia? Aren't you going to say hello back?" I really felt like someone else than my brother was staring at me, and even though it didn't make any sense, it felt so real that I almost thought I was the weird one. Confused, I ended up running out of the room. I thought I should let my parents know of this incident as soon as possible, and I did tell them everything. They didn't believe me at first, but they also witnessed the scene not too long after. They were also shocked by my brother's actions. Dad lost his temper and yelled at my brother at first, but my brother wouldn't listen. My mom tried to persuade him and tried to talk to him, but communication itself was impossible. My brother was already out of his mind. After that, we have invited shamans, monks, and priests known for their powers, but all of them would just say that my brother is possessed and none of their exorcism would work. We went to several mental hospitals and psychiatrics to no avail. Strangely, my brother lost weight day by day. 3 months later, he was only left with bones like a corpse, but he still had a happy look on his face. He would always say with an empty gaze, "I'm happy, so happy." Made me feel like I'd go crazy. He kissed and hugged the empty air. I witnessed that craziness with my own eyes. During that time, my brother lost more than 30 pounds of weight. I thought my brother would end up dying like this. My mom became ill in bed from the shock. It felt like the entire family would be falling apart at this rate. Finally, Dad suggested that we move to a different house. We decided to move into a tiny house. We couldn't help it because we didn't have money. The new house was so tiny that our family wouldn't have any personal space, but it was more important to save my brother's life. So we ended up moving to a new house as soon as we could. Then my brother started to lose his mind. "Where's Mia? Mia's gone." In his madness, he started to throw everything around him. He destroyed the entire house. He stopped eating, and the situation grew worse. One fortunate thing was that he isn't dating a ghost anymore. It seemed like he was slowly coming to his senses. But the thing is, he was suffering even more from love sickness. In the end, we forced him into a psychiatric ward. My brother finally started to calm down with medical help, and our family found peace again. My brother still doesn't know or understand that he dated a ghost. He still asks me if I heard from Mia. I tell him no every time. How can a ghost reach out to me? But to this day, I sometimes hear a knocking sound in the middle of the night. I would wake up by the sound, terrified. Of course, there was no one there, but I think it might be Mia looking for my brother.
My name is Lance. This story happened when I was 13. My older brother, Carl, had a group of friends that always came over to our house. Their names were Jack, George, Max, and Steven. They always liked to hang out in the living room, and usually when I was there watching TV before they came, my brother urged me to go to my room, which annoyed me a lot. I always liked snooping around my brother's room, since he had a lot of cool things in there. He'd always catch me later on and yell at me to get out of his room. One day, I noticed that one of his friends, George, stopped coming over. I asked Carl about it, but he said they weren't friends anymore. I believed him and forgot about the situation. Then I started to realize that my brother was spending a lot of time upstairs in his room and told me not to enter his room at all. He sounded really serious, so I stopped snooping around in his room. His room began to smell really badly, and I asked him what that disgusting smell was. He nervously said that it was some of his gym clothes, and for some reason, I believed him. One day, my parents had gone out, and it was just me and my brother that were home. I was in my room playing on my PlayStation when my brother walked in and asked me if I wanted some pizza for dinner. I immediately said yes, because it's pizza. It's my favorite food. He nodded and then told me he was heading off to the pizza place. Before he closed the front door, he told me, "Please don't go in my room," and left. A few minutes passed and I got bored playing on my PlayStation, so I began snooping around in my brother's room. I know, I completely ignored my brother's rule, but I'm that annoying little brother that makes you want to just smack me. I started going through his drawers but didn't find anything interesting. As I made my way near his bed, that familiar, disgusting smell began to come. I searched his bed to see where that source of the smell was. I then realized that the source was underneath his bed. I bent down and peeked underneath the bed and found a human-sized duffel bag. I began to panic because I thought that there was a body. And as I unzipped the duffel bag, I saw my brother's friend, George, dead. The smell was coming from George's body. I screamed and ran out of the house. I ran over to my neighbor's house and begged her to let me in. I explained to her what I just saw in my house, and she called the police. The police waited for my brother to come home, and when he did, he was immediately arrested. It turns out that George had stolen $200 from my brother, and this angered my brother and caused him to beat George to death. I didn't understand. My brother was such a nice person, and I couldn't imagine him doing something like this. He was sentenced to life in prison, and I haven't seen him since.
This happened when I was 19. It was May 20th, 1974, and I was a freshman in college. I was studying, and it was about 2:30 a.m. I looked at my roommate, we'll call her Haley, and I said, "Are you hungry?" She nodded. I told her I was going to McDonald's and if she wanted anything. She texted me what she wanted, and I left. I was walking to my car when I saw a man standing outside. He was about 2 years older than me, and he was tall, and he had dark black hair. When I walked outside, his eyes turned toward me. I didn't know him, but I still said hi. I was walking to my car, and he watched me. I was creeped out by this dude, so I just got in my car and I drove off. When I got to the fast food place, I went inside to order. As I ordered, I noticed someone was staring at me from outside. I ignored it because I thought it was some homeless guy. When I paid for my food, I left. The guy wasn't there anymore, so I was relieved. I walked to my car and put the food inside, when someone grabbed me from behind. They put their hand over my mouth so I couldn't scream. I was kicking, trying to break free, but they were too strong. They pulled me and pushed me into the trunk of their car. I was crying, begging for God to help me. I could only hear one voice in the car, and what I heard frightened me. "Okay, Ted, you've done this before. Rape and kill." I felt my stomach drop. I knew I was in a bad situation, but I had planned my escape in my head. When the trunk opened, the same guy I saw outside of my school was right there. He grabbed my arms and he pulled me into the woods. I was making small talk, but I didn't try and irritate him. I told him I didn't know who he was, so I wouldn't tell anyone. He ignored me, but he said, "I'm sorry, I don't want to do this," and threw me on the ground. He fell on top of me. I fought him, trying to get him off of me. I grabbed his neck and I kicked him in the balls. He flipped off of me and I ran. I didn't stop running until I saw a telephone booth. I called the cops and they came immediately. The cops searched everywhere, but didn't find him. They didn't find him until 1978. I later learned that my kidnapper was the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy.
It's happening again.
The words struggled to leave my mother's mouth as she stood, shaking in the kitchen. My brother, Jimmy, and I eyed her curiously. Before we could respond, my father stood up and asked her, "Are you sure?" His typically charismatic and whimsical tone now buried beneath a new voice built from panic and concern.
Yes, I'm sure,
she replied. My father stood still for a moment in disbelief, whispered something to my mother, then turned to face us. "Boys, there's a man coming to town. You're going to see him around. Maybe in the street, maybe on a park bench. maybe even in the corner of your bedroom at night. I looked at my brother and was met with a mirrored reflection of confusion. We looked back to my father. Listen to me, boys. No matter what he looks like this time, do not mention anything about his appearance. My mind raced, unsure if my parents were losing their collective minds or if this was some sort of out-of-character joke they were playing. I spoke up, breaking the silence. Dad, what are you talking about? Who's coming to town? My father approached us. He placed one hand on Jimmy's shoulder and the other on mine. I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, or any sense for that matter, but I need you both to be strong and mature for me, okay? If you see a man around town that looks different, promise me you will not say anything about how he looks. Not to me, not to your mom, not to each other or anyone. Not even a whisper. Got it? Jimmy and I looked to each other and then back to Dad. We nodded. The next few days proceeded like normal. We went to school, came home, and played outside with our friends. Mom and Dad never brought up that night. For some reason, we never felt like bringing it back up to them. I went to bed that night content, not knowing that tomorrow would lead to the most horrific experience of my life. The school bus stopped at the corner. Jimmy and I raced home to drop off our backpacks and grabbed our baseball gear. We were meeting the other guys at the Diamond for a pickup game. The weather was perfect. I'll never forget that. Jimmy and I rode as fast as we could pedal down the street and onto the sidewalk. We arrived at the Diamond to find the other guys already waiting for us. We ditched our bikes and sprinted onto the field. When it was my turn to bat, I recited the words my dad had taught me. Hands back, eye on the ball, swing through the ball. I repeated my mantra as the ball came in. The second the bat made contact, I knew that I had crushed it. The ball soared into the sky to the depths of left field. Mike was fast, but even as the fastest kid on the block, he couldn't catch this one. He sprinted towards the ball as it came crashing back down to earth as I ran the bases. I grinned ear to ear as I rounded third to home. Then the cheers from my team ended abruptly as the world seemed to pause and silence. We all looked in unison toward left field. The baseball sat at the feet of a man, at least what resembled a man. Mike stood and stared, glancing back at us. We all inched closer for a better look. The thing that stood in the field wore a black suit jacket, black pants, and a top hat. But it wasn't a man at all. It was, in all respect, a balloon. Someone had tied together a series of balloons to create a sort of ballooned animal human being and dressed it in clothes. The bulbous yellow head was oversized, with red balloon eyes and a big blue grin. It had a green nose sticking out like a ripe cucumber, and what looked to be drawn-on ears. Mike burst out laughing, breaking the silence. A sound I'll never forget. He dropped to the grass and rolled in hysterics. He got back up and stared the balloon creature in its inflated eyeballs. Is this the man our parents have been so scared of? A fucking balloon? His roaring laughter continued. Despite it being very windy that day, the balloon man didn't even flinch. It just stood, grinning its blue grin. Mike poked the balloon man with his finger and jolted back, grabbing his finger in pain. Jimmy tugged me by the shirt. I think we should go home. I nodded in agreement. We rode home in silence. At dinner, we did not mention the incident. Tension filled the kitchen like our parents already knew. That night, a shrill scream filled the street and jolted me out of bed. I ran downstairs, Jimmy tailing behind me. My dad yelled for us to stay inside. We didn't listen. Mike's mom stood outside screaming and pacing the street. Lights from the neighboring houses turned on one by one until we saw. Mike's mother held something in her arms. The neighbors stood from their lawns and gasped when they saw. She was holding a balloon version of Mike. It was even wearing his clothes. She continued her screaming, demanding to know where her son was, pleading with the neighborhood. She dropped to her knees, squeezing balloon impersonation in her arms. The pop echoed throughout the street, and Mike's mother sat on the pavement. My name is Dalton, and this is my story. It all started when my friends dared me to stay in an abandoned haunted train. When I got there, I said goodbye to my friends and walked to the train. It was freezing. I'm lucky I brought my thermal coat, otherwise I would have got frostbite. So when I got to the train, I found a perfect room to sleep in for the night, and I laid down for 20 minutes and fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of screaming and windows being broken. I jumped out of bed and looked out to the hallway, and to my disbelief, I saw a ghostly man looking through all the train cabs for something or someone. Just then, we locked eyes. He came running after me at full speed. I just stood there, terrified out of my mind, when he touched me. At that point, I woke up and realized it was all a nightmare. I decided to not sleep that night. So I went on my phone, and 10 minutes later I heard screaming again and windows being broken. I looked out to the hallway to make sure that man wasn't there. But he was. I thought to myself, did I see into the future? But I didn't waste any time thinking. I grabbed all my things and climbed out a broken window to escape. I called my friends to pick me up and tell them what happened. As I looked back, the man was staring at me. Then he disappeared. Did I just imagine that man, or was it a ghost? But no matter what, I will never forget that man's cold and lifeless face as he stared at me with his creepy smile. A few days ago, I was with my girlfriend and ended up coming home late. Since I wanted to finish something on my game development project, I lost track of time and went to sleep around 3 a.m. So anyways, I fell asleep. Later that night, I had a dream that resembled my school breaks, but it was in a train, bus-ish thing. At breaks, I used to patrol around school and see a bunch of people and say hi, laugh with them, annoy them, and just energetic social shit. So after messing around with my friends in my dream, I went to sit on a train chair. When I started bending over the chair, suddenly I saw an old lady figure. She looked pretty, I don't know how to explain it, kind of like the old lady from the comic Bone, but a messed up, skinny version of her. She moved in my direction while moving her hands in big, weird circles. And suddenly I felt a hand holding my wrist really hard. I got scared, while the holding started to be more painful. Then I realized it was a dream and tried to wake up. I managed to wake up about a minute after. I woke up while my wrist was in heavy pain. I looked at the clock to check the time. It was 8 in the morning, and my eyes were still blurry. I got my phone to check if my girlfriend sent me a message. Nope, only a message from my mom. Since she usually texts me recipes, I decided to check later. I went back to sleep and woke up a few hours later. I opened my phone and checked the message from my mom. Hi, we didn't want to interrupt you this morning. Grandma just died. I was totally shocked. I didn't tell anyone but my girlfriend about it. It's such a weird feeling.
This story happened to my aunt. She lives next door to our house with her daughter and husband, so we can easily contact them if needed. She is a school teacher, and her school is so far from her home that she rents a house near the school. Her family stays in the house next to ours full-time, but my aunt lives at the rental for 6 days a week and spends 1 day with her family. Last month, when she was back in her family home for lockdown, she started acting strangely. She wouldn't eat anymore and refused to talk to anyone. One day, I decided to go to their house and visit her daughter. To my surprise, I saw that she was laughing to herself and talking with her shadow. I got goosebumps when she turned to me, gave me a predatory smile, and said, "Who are you?" Her husband noticed her strange behavior and called a shaman. She arrived and checked my aunt and said someone had black magicked her and there was a ghost behind her that was controlling her. Then the shaman led my aunt into a room. After 3 hours, the shaman came out and said that the ghost will not agree to leave her body unless we give it goat's blood. The next day, my uncle bought a goat and killed it next to a haunted jungle and gave the blood to the shaman. What the shaman did next, I still don't know. My aunt got better soon after, but I'm still afraid to talk with her about the incident. I wish I could say this was a made-up story, but every word is true. I'm May, and this is an event that happened in my life that haunts me to this day. One day, I was in my school's library, and I was in a chat room with my school friends, and there was this one profile named Nikki that I did not recognize. I asked my friends about it, and they didn't know her either, so we kicked her. After school, I grabbed some food and did my homework at a cafe. While I was doing my homework, I got added to a group chat named Best Friends. I noticed that Nikki was in the chat. I said hi and asked her who she was. "I am your new best friend." I responded by asking again, "Who are you?" She said, "Why did you get your coffee without me, best friend?" I looked around, but everyone was on their phones, so I couldn't have known who it was. But there was one girl with dark hair and dark eyes with this creepy smile. I didn't want to judge people based on their looks, so I just forgot about it and rode home on my bike. When I got home, I took a shower. While I was showering, I got the feeling that someone was watching me. I hopped out of the shower, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure run past my window. At this point, I was getting really scared, so I told my friends about it, and they said I was just being paranoid. That very night, I woke up to a loud smash in the living room and a shrill scream. I grabbed my metal baseball bat and dialed 911. I would have told my parents, but my mom was on a work trip and my dad was taking care of my grandma. I creeped downstairs to see that same girl from the cafe. I screamed at the sight of a butcher's knife in her hand and hit her on the head with a bat. She wasn't fazed at all. She kept chanting, "Best friends," over and over again. The police finally got there and arrested her. She didn't resist and only kept chanting, "Best friends." She is now in a mental institute, but I still fear that she will come back and do something bad. I moved to a completely different state and had 2 daughters with my wife.
It was the last September that I had an accident. At the time, the police told my parents that my condition was very dangerous. And my parents, of course, they ran to the hospital and almost passed out when they saw me. For your information, I was unconscious at the time of the car accident, and I still don't remember how it exactly happened. However, there was one thing I remembered. It was that I couldn't breathe at all. Do you know what it feels like to be breathless? Well, I think this is the most similar explanation. First, breathe in as hard as you can. Hold it in for about 3 seconds, and then breathe in again instead of exhaling. Repeat it over and over until you really feel like you're going to die. Is this how I'm going to die? I had some friends who think about death so easily, but when death got closer to me, it was really scary. As things turned out that my face was so swollen that I couldn't open my eyes. Even my mom didn't recognize me at first. Anyway, I lost my memory when I was in an accident. But when I woke up in a very short time, I was so scared thinking that I was going to die. I just peed on my pants, struggling with my feet, and finally passed out again. Some people ask me if I dreamed of a dream or if I noticed the time passed while I was unconscious. but my answer is no. When I regained consciousness, I was already in hospital. You know what's really scary? Everybody knows that I was unconscious for 3 weeks in the ICU. But in fact, my consciousness has been back since a week later. But nobody knew. Family, nurses, and even Doc. They didn't know at all. I couldn't move my eyelids or a finger at all. Though I was conscious, I was unable to move my body, only hearing sounds with my ears. At first, I really thought I was dead because my consciousness came back very slowly. Is it heaven or a dream? I thought so, but later I realized when I heard my mother's voice when she came to see me during visiting hours. Okay, I'm in the hospital now. I had an accident. It was just like a hell. I wanted to let them know that my consciousness had returned, but literally, there was no other way that I could do. The nurses stopped by my room 3 times a day. They opened my eyes and lit up my eyes with a flashlight to see the pupil reaction. I wanted to roll my eyes and let them know that I woke up, but stupidly, my eyes just looked at the light. Couldn't do anything. I didn't even know how the days went by. I had nothing to do all day, so I just went sleep and kept waking up or being lost in wild fancies every day, which was terribly boring. If I think it's been 3 or 4 days or so, it's only been a day. Well, visiting hours were normally twice in a day, so I could confirm that the day had passed by watching my parents come and go. After that, I began to worry about my physical condition. Are both my arms and legs attached well? Is my spine okay? Dang, I realized that I had signed to donate my organs after my death about a few years ago. What if my parents agreed to donate my body, although I'm alive? I felt like I was going to have a mental illness even after I completely woke up. Furthermore, I could feel the enormous pain in my body. The most painful thing was when they drilled a hole in my throat, and the doctor also said that there was a problem with the tube in my side, that I had to rearrange it. But I was judged by the doc that I was unconscious at that time. So everything proceeded without any anesthesia. But later on, when my consciousness was restored, I realized that the intensity of the pain at that time was less than 1/10 of the actual pain. During the coma, it didn't hurt at all when they wrapped my wound. But later, I woke up. It felt like I was going to die. As you see, when you visit the ICU, you can see that the patient's condition is all clean. The nurses usually take care of everything before visiting hours in the morning. Literally, everything. That made me respect the nurses. One day, the nurses put something in a container and then injected it in my nose through the tubes. Actually, I wasn't hungry at all until then, but as soon as the food was injected into my nose, I suddenly felt hungry. I must not feel the taste because it was put in my nose, but actually, it was really delicious, and I could feel the way the food went down vividly. And that thing stops just below the chest, and it feels like something warm liquid is wrapping the area. I really love that feeling. But not long after, they sucked the food back with something like a syringe to see how much I had digested. I felt like my whole intestines were sucking up, and it really sucks. But once the food had been injected inside my body, I was excited whenever I heard the nurse shaking the can every time, because I wanted to eat it as soon as quickly. It's been about 2 weeks, and one day the doctor came in and said, "Let's wake me up." After some kind of drug was dosed, I thought I opened my eyes right after, but the doc said that I opened my eyes about an hour later. But nevertheless, the nurses were still all surprised, because no one usually wakes up in an hour. Of course, there wasn't much I could do after I opened my eyes. I was still put on a respirator and both my arms and legs were all tied up. I just kept my eyes open, moved a finger to right, talking a little bit. Just like that, I'd been given muscle relaxants for 3 weeks, and it seemed to have taken almost a month to walk again. Not only my arms and legs, but also my internal muscles were too relaxed. So it was the worst when I first went to the bathroom because I couldn't squeeze my butt at all. After a few weeks, I was able to leave the hospital. While lying down for a few weeks, I heard the nurses often gossiping about each other. So I just told my family about the fact that I was conscious. You don't want to embarrass each other, right? Well, whenever I lie on my bed before going to sleep, I keep thinking of that time. What if I can't breathe again while sleeping like this? Unfortunately, I can't sleep well since then, being scared of it. Imagine not being able to move a finger or your whole body at all, like my situation. You can't talk, and even you can't let the people know that you're awake. You know, hearing friends and family sob while you're lying down is much more miserable and just terrible than you thought. What most scary thing is that everyone doesn't know that you're conscious, but you are. Actually, this story isn't that great, but it's sure that this is something no one can experience easily. So I hope you guys are always careful and careful.
Hi, my pseudonym is Jade. I just wanted to share my experience that transpired 5 years ago. I was a busy college student back then. It was around 8 p.m. when I finished my classes. Shortly after our last subject ended, I am excited to go home to relax. When I find it hard to catch a ride, I decided to go to the jeepney terminal, which is a couple of meters away from our university, in order to secure a seat in the jeepney. Even though I was a bit exhausted from my schoolworks, I still managed to keep myself together and continued walking. It was just an ordinary busy evening, and as I am walking my way to the terminal, I always put my earphones on to listen to some music. As I approached the terminal, I heard the jeepney barker, a person who calls for passengers, said, "Oh, hulin biyahi hulin biyahi nata," means that jeepney will be the last ride for tonight. I just laughed at the barker and told him that this would not be the last ride, but it will be the last one only for this day. Then I immediately climbed up to the jeepney. When the jeepney was already full with passengers, it then started to travel. While riding the jeepney, I am fond of looking outside while listening to music. I noticed that the views started to change. Instead of seeing city lights and buildings, it turned into a field, like we're on a rural place. The place was dark, and only the jeepney's light inside was the source of light on the road. I was confused for a moment because I thought I rode the wrong jeepney. But after I read the signage hanging inside the jeepney, I am indeed sure taking the right one. Maybe the driver took a wrong turn, or is this a kind of a shortcut? I said to myself. So I asked the driver if where he is taking us. "Excuse me, Manong, where are we?" The driver did not answer and just continued to drive. When I looked at my fellow passengers, I was shocked. They were all wearing white with some bloodstains, and their head were all missing. I could not believe my eyes. Then, out of the blue, the driver spoke. "We're not lost, miss. We are taking the right way." I was really terrified and shocked. The things can't sink in through my mind. Chills ran down through my spine. I was coldly sweating and my face turned pale. I wanted to jump out of the jeepney, but I can't move a muscle. Suddenly, I heard someone's voice out of nowhere. "You do not belong here. Go, just jump. Why are you here? You are not allowed in here." It snapped the creep out of me. Then I jumped out on the jeepney. I got scrapes on my arms and bruises on my legs as I fell on the succeeding jeepney. But I'm glad I managed to get out of it. As I stared at the jeepney that continued its journey, it suddenly crashed. The jeepney was badly damaged and blowed up. I was screaming as hard as I can for help, but then I woke up. It was just a dream. The passengers were shocked and looked at me like I was some kind of a lunatic the moment I woke up. A lady asked me if I was okay because I was sweating so much and my face turned pale. I started to panic and crying, desperately asking the driver to stop the jeepney, even if I'm still far away from home. The other passengers trying to make me calm. After causing a commotion, I immediately got out of the jeepney. As the jeepney drove off, suddenly, it was hit by a big truck. Just a few seconds, the jeepney blowed up and starting to burn. I heard loud screaming coming from the jeepney, asking for help. I could not believe my eyes for what had just happened. Then suddenly, I remembered my dream. To this day, I still cannot believe that moment. Then I realized what the barker said right before the incident. He said it was the last ride. Even though I am thankful that I'm still alive today, still, there is some guilt inside me, for I did not manage to save them.
This happened around my last year of middle school. I joined a new school in 7th grade and had been bullied by kids in that school ever since I joined. Even the kids on my bus wouldn't leave me alone. Every day was the same. Hop on the bus, get bullied and taunted, get off at school, and get bullied. Back on the bus to get bullied again on the way home. One day, when I got on the bus, I was already in a bad mood because my mom had nagged me about something petty. I sat in my usual spot, which was one seat before the last seat on the left. I rested my head on the seat and decided to try taking a nap. Within a few minutes, the boys pulled my hair and started to poke me and stuff, which was something that they do every day, but it annoyed me more than usual this time. I shouted back and accidentally pushed them off a little harder than usual. "Shut up, freak. Do us all a favor and die," he shouted back. What surprised me is the teacher on our bus never said anything about it. In spite of that, a couple of girls joined in and started telling me how I'd never be good enough and I'd be a worthless human for the rest of my life. All the bullying, it got to me, but not as bad as it did that day. I started to twitch and my hands started to shake. I felt a rush, and definitely not the good kind. The kids laughed and passed it off as me being weird, and then all of a sudden, I blacked out. When I came back to my senses, everyone was sitting in their seats instead of surrounding me and looked a bit shaken. I stood up to look behind, and the boy that had earlier pulled my hair flinched. I was so confused. Did I do something to them? The rest of the day went by fast, and it was finally time to go home. I got on the bus and sat down in my usual seat, but nobody spoke or hit my head or anything. I was usually one of the last ones to get off the bus, so once most of the kids had left, I asked the kid who sat in front of me what had happened this morning. He said my eyes looked red, and I had a demented smile on my face and laughed. One of the boys asked why I was laughing and was about to say something when I held him by his neck and whispered in his ear, saying this: "You're making me angry, and if you make me angrier, I'll make sure I slit your throat and hide your body where no one will find it. Do you understand me? And if you anger me again, remember, you'll be seeing me very soon." All of this while I was choking him when somebody pushed me off and I passed out. Everyone was surprised because I'm actually quite vulnerable and was very careful. I haven't been angered like this ever since. I don't exactly know what happened that morning, but I'm guessing this is how my shadow persona decided to make an appearance. I just hope this never happens again.
People call me Ren. This happened a few years ago when I was in sophomore year. One day, me and my two friends, Carly and Jenny, decided to go to Carly's house for a sleepover since it was a Saturday and we all had no plans. Around 6 p.m., I went to Carly's house and Jenny was already there. I arrived the same time as the pizza, so we all decided to grab a few slices and go to Carly's room. We talked and went on TikTok and Snapchat for about an hour. It was already 7 p.m. and we were bored, so Carly suggested that we go swim in our pool. We all agreed and then changed into our swimsuits. Carly's pool had a device that made the water in the pool change colors. We all jumped in and then sat on the steps. The water was at chest level. We just sat there and occasionally getting out of water and jumping in the middle of the pool. We noticed that the red color was missing in the color rounds because we kept seeing orange, pink, and purple, but no red. A few minutes later, when we pointed out the fact that there was no red, the colors randomly turned into red. And that's when I looked over the backyard fence. What I saw sent chills down my spine. There were two beady yellow eyes. That made me feel like it was looking through my soul. Carly and Jenny didn't seem to notice the eyes, because they were too busy freaking out about the freakish red color in the pool. We all decided that it was time we went inside. So we got out of the pool and grabbed our towels. We stood in the front of the backyard door, drying ourselves while talking. I told them about the yellow eyes I saw and how it scared me. They all laughed and told me to stop trying to scare them. I got annoyed because they were dismissing something that clearly bothered me, but I just brushed it off, so I didn't ruin the night. We went back inside and took turns taking a shower. Later that night, we were all in Carly's room, joking around while watching a movie. I needed to use the bathroom, so I excused myself and went out of the room. I was walking around trying to find a bathroom since I wasn't that familiar with the house yet. I reached a hallway that had an open window. I then for some reason looked outside. All I saw were the same yellow eyes staring back at me. I freaked out and ran back to Carly's room, but I decided not to tell them because I just knew they wouldn't believe me. Around 12 p.m., we decided to go to sleep. I closed my eyes and fell asleep, but I got a nightmare about those yellow eyes. I jerked awake. I was just curious on who owned them. I walked to the window where I saw the eyes, and you can guess what happened. The eyes were gone. I got a little scared, so I went back and decided to just sleep it off. I laid down on the blankets that we laid out. I was facing Carly's closet, and I noticed that the closet was cracked open. I tried to adjust my eyes to the darkness of the room, but it wasn't working. I noticed that there was something yellow in the closet, and that made me think about the yellow eyes. I got up quietly, so I didn't wake Carly and Jenny up. I opened the closet, and a man with scruffy hair and dirty clothes jumped at me. I noticed he had bright yellow eyes, and I realized that it was him that I saw. I blacked out and woke up in the hospital. I was confused, so I asked Jenny, who was next to me, on what had happened. She told me that they woke up to me screaming while looking at the closet and saw me passing out on the floor. I told her that there was a man, but she just said that there was no one else there but me, Carly, and her. Apparently, I had a heart attack due to shock. To this day, I still don't know what happened and who or what attacked me.
My name is Donovan, and I'm a 14-year-old light-skinned boy. At the time of the story, I was 11 or 12. I can't remember. All I remember is that I was in the 5th grade at the time. Anyways, one day I got home from school and called up my friend Ethan. He's been my friend ever since 3rd grade, and we're still friends to this day. On the phone, I asked if we should play basketball at my school's park. So I got my basketball and a few cold water bottles and put them all in my backpack. I rode my bike over to the school basketball court. I sat there a few minutes because Ethan's house wasn't as close to the school as mine was. He got to the court around 4 p.m. We started to play basketball for a few hours before Ethan said we should go to the sewer tunnels. There were some large sewer tunnels about 6 or 7 feet tall, and they were only about 15 minutes away on bike. I was bored of playing basketball for a few hours, so I said sure, and we rode our bikes 15 minutes away to the tunnels. They were in a ditch and under a pretty busy road, to describe them a little. When me and Ethan got there, we hopped off our bikes and started walking through the tunnels, pushing our bikes with us. We walked for maybe about 30 seconds before he recommended we should turn our bikes around while pushing them. In case we see anything, we can just hop on our bikes and pedal away, instead of having to turn them around and then get on to pedal away. I said that's a good idea and could possibly save our lives, so we did it. We walked in the tunnel for a few more minutes with our phone flashlights on, looking for cool, old stuff. Out of nowhere, he stopped me and said, "Be quiet. Do you hear that?" I was listening for a few seconds, and then I heard it. I heard loud breathing and a giggling going through the tunnel. He whispered with a worried look that we should get out of here. I was scared as hell. I obviously agreed. We got on our bikes and started pedaling as fast as we could to get out of there. As we were riding through the tunnel, the breathing and giggling turned into this very loud and psychopathic screaming and laughter. We also heard someone chasing us. After a few seconds, there were some loud footsteps following us. We pedaled for our lives for one more minute to the end of the tunnel. When we got to the end of the tunnel, it was completely dark outside, but at the tunnel entrance, there was a light right above it. I looked back after 30 seconds of pedaling. What I saw almost made me fall off my bike and pass out. There were 6 men, all dressed in suits, and they were all wearing terrifying white masks. Each one of them had a machete with blood all over it. I also noticed that their masks and suits had blood smeared all over them. I saw all that and screamed, and they started chasing us. We were still pedaling away, desperately trying to get to my house. We got to my house after 10 minutes. We hid our bikes in my garage, because if they saw the house with the same bikes we rode away in, they would know it was us. Earl and I burst into the house where my parents were watching TV. We told our parents what we saw, and they called the police. Ethan and I told the cops where we saw the men, and they drove over there. When the policemen entered the tunnel, 2 of the men charged at them with machetes, and the police ended up having to kill those 2 men. I don't feel bad. The other 4 men were found in a room in one of the tunnels. In the room, they found the 4 men, but in that room there were around 20 dead bodies, and 4 kids still alive, with tape around their mouths. The police arrested the men and freed the kids, and thankfully, the kids were all right. The 4 men got sentenced to death and were thankfully executed about a year ago. This is a haunting memory, and I am very thankful that Ethan said we should turn our bikes around, because if we didn't and we were too slow, we could have ended up like those 20 unlucky people before us.
We used to have this neighbor back when I was 15, and I didn't find this out until years later, but he basically was the sole reason we ended up moving out of the house we were living in at the time. So the way my dad tells it, it all started when the guy started making something in the shed in his backyard. Obviously, he was entitled to do whatever he wanted on his property, especially during the daylight hours, but my dad said all the sawing and hammering noises were a real pain in the butt. He figured it'd only be a couple of days, but a week went by and the guy was still making all this noise in the evenings and on weekends. It went on late into the night on a bunch of different occasions, and my dad had to go over and threaten to call the cops to get him to knock it off. Seems a little extreme, I know, but Dad had already tried asking nicely, and the guy was just a total jerk, so it was the only thing that seemed to work. After that, the guy kept the sawing and hammering to reasonable hours. Still a pain, apparently, but nothing he didn't have the right to. But then, my dad looks over the fence one day and sees the guy carrying a whole bunch of chains into the shed. Then the next thing he knows, the guy is carrying all these shackle-looking things into the shed, the kind you use to keep a person prisoner. Dad asks what he's building in there, but the guy is all, "Mind your business, mister," saying things like that. My dad is starting to get pretty nervous about the whole thing, and he's close to calling the cops because it was obviously looking incredibly shady, and maybe it'll get the guy to stop hammering and sawing all freaking day too. But still, he holds off for one night too long, and that's when he hears a scream coming from the guy's backyard. He says it was one of those screams of the blood-curdling variety, and he goes outside to listen, then hears a few more muffled sounds coming from the shed where the guy was building, whatever it was he was building in there. He tries looking over the fence to get an idea of what's going on and sees our neighbor walking out to the shed, covered in blood, with something sharp and shiny in his hand. But just before he closes the door, Dad said he caught a glimpse of someone strapped onto some kind of big wooden board. That was it. My dad runs back inside, calls the cops, and tells them something messed up is happening in our neighbor's backyard, how he has been building some kind of torture device or whatever, and how he thought he was in the process of basically murdering someone in there. The cops show up, but they don't make it into the backyard. They just drive off after talking to the guy. My dad calls the cops back and asks them what they're thinking, and they need to get into that shed right away because something unspeakable is happening in there. They tell them that they can't get into the guy's place without a warrant, that the guy had a bandaged hand and claimed the blood was because he had an accident. The cops seemed happy enough with that explanation and had gone back to their precinct. But they were in the process of getting a warrant because of my dad's claim that he'd seen a body in there, and because of how urgent it was, it might only be a few hours before they could get one signed by a judge. Then boom. The next day, the cops show back up at the guy's house at like 6 a.m., and it wakes my dad up because they were literally sawing a lock off the door to the shed. He watches all freaking morning, and get this, they carry out the body he'd seen in that shed. Only it wasn't a body. It was like one of those mannequin type things, and it had blood all over it. The guy has actually been building some kind of torture table in his shed, only he hadn't actually done anything to anyone, so the guy ended up getting a full apology from the county after they didn't find anything to arrest him over. But still, my dad's not happy knowing he lives next to someone who'd build something like that, and after arguing back and forth with the cops about the guy's right to build some sort of weird torture table, he ends up just being like, screw this, we're moving. He didn't say anything to us at the time because obviously me and my sister were still young and he didn't want anything like that in our heads. But after I had moved out and my sister had graduated college, he ended up telling us at a little reunion dinner. As you can guess, our jaws were on the floor when he was telling us, as we had no idea he was anything but some annoying home improvements nerd. It came up because we were complaining about having to move schools at that age, as me and my sister both lost a bunch of good friends and it sucked having to start at a new school right when I just started at a new one there. He figured the whole thing would be justified to us why we had to move, and honestly, I get it. I wouldn't want to live next to a freak like that, either.
This story takes place during the height of the pandemic in 2020. I had always been a little overweight and lazy, and since there was no one out on the roads, I decided to take up walking. My neighborhood wraps around itself. By the time you made it all the way around, you would have walked an entire mile. The only people I ever saw were this nice couple that walked around the same time that I did. We would always stop and have these nice little chats from time to time. I would even look forward to my walks just to talk to these people. But one day, they vanished. I would never see them out and about. The grass outside of their home became overgrown, and it seemed like parts of their house were damaged from neglect. After a while, curiosity got the best of me, and I would knock on the door whenever I would pass by their house, but I would never get an answer. Now, on the day in question, I had been busy and missed my daily walk, so I decided to take my walk during the night. I grabbed a flashlight and went on my way. I eventually passed by the house. I then noticed that the front door was open. Being the curious person I was, I walked down the driveway and yelled into the house. Hello? Is there anyone here? All was quiet. But as I stood there, I heard a creak to my right. I peeked inside with my flashlight, and then my light fell upon a tall, rough-looking man, just standing there, grinning at me. I was startled when I saw him. He then lunged towards me and began to chase me. As I mentioned earlier, I was overweight, so I couldn't run very fast. He would have caught up to me if it wasn't for a car passing by. The man ran back inside, and I managed to get away and call the police. When they arrived, they found the man in the same spot he was when I first saw him. It wouldn't be till a while later before all the details came out. The man who chased me that night confessed to brutally murdering the couple who lived at the house and burying their bodies in the backyard. He also admitted to torturing them before ending their lives. The night that I walked into the house, he was in the middle of making sure the bodies were not uncovered by the heavy rain. The house was bulldozed after they dug up the bodies and were given a proper burial. The scumbag tried to plead insanity, but the court ruled that out, giving him 2 life sentences without parole. I sometimes still walk past where the couple once lived, and every time I do, I think about how those 2 sweet, innocent people were taken out of this world by an absolute monster.
Pearl Hotel was built in 1920. It belonged to a wealthy widowed countess, Sarah Ann. It is said the countess was extremely beautiful. Her late husband, the count, was said to be old, very old, and there was a rumor rounding the streets stating that the countess was a true vixen who had married the old count for his money and, after a while, killed him, becoming the sole heir to all the riches. Anyway, Sarah Ann lived a lavish life surrounded by servants and maids, hosting important events and even attending the most extravagant balls. Eventually, her lifestyle caught up to her, and money began to go dangerously low. She then decided to transform her mansion into her hotel, and as luck may see it, she became more rich than before. Her beauty and wealth attracted a lot of bachelors. Well, one of them managed to catch her attention. His name was David Lancelot. Very little is written about this man's background in historical journals. All we know is Sarah Ann fell head over heels in love with him, and within a very short time, they got married. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but even barely a year had passed when David Lancelot was pronounced dead. The young countess became a widow yet again, but this time the suspicions had mostly turned to true belief that the countess was a cold-blooded killer. Thorough investigations was carried out, and to her dismay, the court had its decision against her and found her guilty of murder. Officers had found out David Lancelot was a long-term con artist, and in fact was planning to absurd her wealth and escape with the help of his brother Jerome. Things, however, turned around when she learned about his plans and poisoned his food. Her most trusted maid Kia testified against her and stating that she mixed the poison into the food and told her not to tell anyone. Despite her wails and desperate cries, Sarah Ann, at the age of 24, was sentenced to life imprisonment. A few months later, the ownership of the hotel was handed over to the late count's grandchildren. Exactly 3 years later, Sarah Ann escaped from prison. It is said that she was never found. Did she return to the hotel? Nobody knows, and she still remained missing till today, never to be seen or to be heard of again. Well, the hotel business boomed for years to come and progressed to becoming one of the most desired holiday destinations. People flocked from far-off places to see this fine haven. What drew them to this place? Was it the fine services, the amazing decor, the varying cuisines, the wonderful views from their rooms? Or was it the history of the hotel? Was it the fact that a murder had taken place attracted the large number of guests? Were people rolling in torrents in expectation of paranormal activity? Was the curiosity of trying to find out whether the hotel is haunted or not bringing in so many guests? Well, we were going to know about the reason soon. In 1960, the nightmares began. This was the year when women who were guests at the hotel began to go missing, and they were eventually found dead. According to the statements of the police officials in the newspaper, who did not give the exact description of state of the bodies which were found, but simply stated that this was a work of the sickest mind, 8 women went missing in a span of 6 months. None of these women had anything in common, well, except for the fact that they had black hair, light eyes, light skin, and a slender body. They had an uncanny resemblance to each other and almost appeared to be related to each other. The weirdest fact was that these were the exact description of Sarah Ann. An old portrait of her confirmed this fact. Who would be killing women resembling Sarah Ann 60 years after the incident? The hotel was ultimately shut down by the court as investigations continued, but every progress led to a dead end. Ultimately, the killer was never caught, and the case was closed. The hotel also remained closed for months. The original owners sold it, and it was completely restructured. Every single piece of furniture, artwork, etc. were thrown out. 10 years later, in 1970, the hotel was reopened with a new name, Grand Gem Hotel. The new owners assured the public that the hotel had undergone a tremendous transformation. Anything that was present from the 1920s was gotten rid of, and they had priests who conducted a spiritual purification. The headlines of the newspaper indicated it was an exorcism, which is supposed to deem that the place is now safe from evil. The hotel operated normally for not even a month when strange occurrences began to take place. At first, there were complaints made by women claiming that their belongings went missing. Other times, they would state things such as fine clothes, jewelry, shoes, or flowers would appear in their bedrooms. They would also receive cards with messages on them. Afterwards, they stated they were being pursued by someone. They felt scared. During their stay, these women faced fatal accidents. They all had one thing in common, yes, their uncanny resemblance to Sarah Ann. Well, this time no one died yet, but the hotel had to compensate for their injuries as they all claimed they were physically assaulted by an unseen being. They were left with bruises and even bones. The biggest blow was yet to come. During their anniversary party, a fire broke out, and everyone burnt to ashes. The firefighters tried very hard but couldn't save anyone. Afterwards, they tried to determine where the fire had started, but couldn't determine. This time, the property was captured by the government and closed down. 5 years later, it was turned into a primary school, but dangerous mishaps continued to happen throughout the years. Then, finally, in the year 2001, the whole building was torn down and the entire land was turned into an enormous graveyard. It is said when the school was inaugurated, which was around 1985 till 2001, there were reported cases of multiple accidents, 5 missing females, and 2 murder cases. Before the number of fatalities increased, it was best for the hotel to be torn down. From 2001 till today, there have been no such incidents. How could there be any cases? The place is now being accommodated by the dead. What do you think could have been behind all these mishaps? Some believed it was Sarah Ann herself. They said that she never left. She had been living in hiding within the walls of the hotel and became determined to punish the town people. But this theory seems highly illogical. The murders began happening 60 years after the actual incident. How could an aged woman do all this? Some say it was a fanatic serial killer who was obsessed with the history of the hotel and was living out their own sick fantasy. While others claimed that it was the ghost of David Lancelot in search of her to avenge his cruel death.
I grew up in this podunk town in Nebraska, and in the 18 years I lived there, only 2 significant things happened. The first thing, and probably the best thing, is that I was born. I know, you're all very welcome. But the second, and perhaps the worst thing that ever happened in our town, was when Kevin Meyer set his garage on fire. Or rather, maybe what Kevin did constituted the worst thing that never happened to our town, and if that doesn't make any sense, bear with me. All will become clear over the course of the next few paragraphs. So it was a Sunday night, and I was in my freshman year of high school at the time, so still at that age when me and my friends would go out on our bikes for an evening. You know, good old wholesome fun. We're just riding around when we see another kid from our class riding down the street at top speed. We stop to say hey, and in between panting breaths, the kid's like, "Oh my god, guys, the Myers garage is on fire, come look." We then hurtled down the street at full speed, following the kid from our class until we're faced with this raging inferno that used to be the Myers family garage. Only, right as we get there, we're immediately told to keep back by the cops and firefighters on scene. We thought we were already at a safe distance, so we're kind of confused but did as we're told. Only then we start hearing all these pops and bangs coming from the garage, and the firefighters trying to put the flames out suddenly ran for cover. I had no idea what was causing the little bangs, but if it was scaring the cops and the firefighters, then I figured I should have been scared of it too. I actually thought the Meyer house was about to explode or something, and so did my buddies, so we had no problem getting out of there quick, riding home and telling our parents about it. The next morning at school, all the kids were talking about the fire, mainly because Kevin Meyer hadn't showed up to any of his classes. Some kids were spreading rumors saying they'd seen the paramedics loading him up onto an ambulance, and he was so badly burned that he was just a smoldering husk. Others said that he and his parents had gone to live with relatives since the fire had made their house basically unlivable, which is the story I believe because I figured there'd be actual confirmation if anyone had died. But then the next morning, there was confirmation. News reports said that firefighters had recovered one body from the burned-out garage, while the surviving family members were staying with relatives and had asked the media to give them some space. So, on that Tuesday, we knew someone had died, but we had no idea exactly who. The Meyers had 3 generations living in that house, and Kevin was one of 4 kids. A bunch more rumors began swirling, and it was only the following day when our high school principal called us all in for a special assembly that we actually got any concrete answers. I remember the whole school filing into the gymnasium where the county sheriff and a handful of deputies were all stood in front of the bleachers, each of them with a real serious look on their faces. Once we were all seated, the principal opened up by saying that the county sheriff had something important to talk to us about, and as he stepped forward and took his hat off, I swear you could have heard a pin drop. We knew it was going to be something about the Meyer family, but exactly what it was, I'd swear I'd never have guessed in a million years. I'm not about to pretend I can remember what the guy said word for word. This all happened almost 20 years ago now, but this is basically the gist of it. Folks, you've all heard about the fire over at the Meyer place, and I'm sure you've all heard about the tragic loss of life. Well, I'm sorry to have to be the one to tell you, but your classmate Kevin was the one who passed. There was a kind of rolling gasp across the gym, and the sheriff paused for a second before continuing. Now, we're still trying to figure out how the fire started, so we're inviting anyone with any information on Kevin to please step forward. You don't have to do it now. You can call my office whenever you like, and we can have a more discreet conversation. Please, if you have anything to tell us about any strange or unusual behavior Kevin exhibited in the days before the fire, I implore you to step forward. That was the first clue we had that something was really wrong. I guess they wanted to handle the whole thing with kid gloves, and I can totally understand why they might want to shield us from what they already knew. The initial reaction was one of total shock and grief. Kids were horrified that one of their own had died in such a horrible way. But if the cops had told us what they'd really found in there, I don't think people would have been nearly as sad. More like angry. It took 2 more days for the truth to come out, and by that time, the town had decided to defer responsibility to our parents. There was a town meeting, I remember that, because my parents asked me to do my chores before they returned, and all I did was play Perfect Dark for like 2 hours. When they got home, I thought they'd be mad that I hadn't even put a dent into any of the stuff I had to do, but they weren't mad. They had these weird but sad, but intense looks on their faces, exactly the same ones they had when my grandpa died suddenly. They sit me down in the TV room and ask how well I knew Kevin. I tell them not much, that I had Spanish class with him, but that we never talked. They then start asking me a bunch of other questions, if Kevin ever got mad at me, if I liked him, stuff like that. In the end, I just straight up told them it was obvious they knew something about Kevin, and that I'd rather they just told me that it was him taking his own life or something because I was old enough to handle the truth. Turns out, I was not old enough to handle the truth. Kevin hadn't taken his own life. He'd accidentally blown himself up trying to make a bomb. Apparently, he wanted to test his method out by making a test model. But as he was putting it together, He somehow detonated the thing and made it enough of a bang to kill him before setting his garage on fire. At first, it had looked like he might have just been a firebug, like a pyromaniac, and he was just screwing around with an accelerant or something. That's why it took a few days for the cops to be sure of what happened. They had to go over the burned out garage and go through Kevin's stuff to try and work out why he did it. The cops then found a journal Kevin had been keeping, one where he'd basically laid out his plan to build a bomb, then put it under the church one Sunday morning while it was full of families. The cops wouldn't say exactly what the rest of the journal consisted of, only that it made for highly disturbing reading, and that there were several references to the Columbine massacre of the year before. Mom was crying by the end of the talk, and Dad was the most shaken up I'd ever seen him. That kid wanted to kill almost the entire town, and let me tell you, if he'd hit the church around the upcoming Veterans Day service, he'd have killed like 90% of the people in our town, all in one fiery blast. And the most I ever got for an explanation was just, the kid wanted to hurt people, or he wasn't right. No one really bullied the kid or gave him a hard time. He was just crazy, I guess. But I also thank God that he wasn't smarter and that he didn't put a little more research in or take a little more care. Because if he had, he might have wiped our entire town right off the map. Since mid-July of 2021, China's Henan province had been affected by a prolonged period of heavy rainfall. In just 1 hour alone, weather stations in the provincial capital of Zhengzhou observed a maximum rainfall of 20 centimeters. And that might not sound like too much, but consider the fact that just 20 centimeters caused a horrifying 302 deaths. The flooding has affected a whopping 9.3 million people, and with over 800,000 of them requiring emergency evacuation. Naturally, there are hundreds of thousands of tragic and terrifying stories that have come out of Henan in the past few months, but arguably none quite as horrifying as those that emerged from the floods of July 20th. Zhengzhou is located in a semi-arid region far from China's coast, a place where the annual rainfall averages just 60 centimeters. But on July 20th alone, 67 centimeters of rain was dumped on the city's unsuspecting populace, with the water pooling in low-lying areas and flooding many of the city's streets. Zhengzhou University's chief hydrologist, Hu Kaihong, stated the city's drainage system was built to withstand what's known as a 100-year flood, so named so because they only occurred every 100 years. Zhengzhou's metro system, on the other hand, its subterranean location making it very susceptible to the flooding, was built to withstand a 200-year flood, with its entrances built on raised platforms to negate the effects of the heavy summer rains. Yet, Hu later stated that the Zhengzhou that day was more like a 1,000-year flood, and unbeknownst to the subway system's operators, water had begun to collect in a metro yard in a low-lying area of the city. Around 6 p.m. that evening, commuters traveling to the Zhengzhou subway system were well aware of the heavy rain that had been falling, but had already been assured that the system was essentially flood-proof. Yet when all the system's trains suddenly ground to a halt, most of which did so in the network of tunnels, its passengers began to suspect that the system wasn't as flood-proof as they'd been told. Some believed it was simply a temporary fault on the line, and that the trains would resume service in due course. But after an extended period of time went by, the passengers began to grow concerned. By 6:10 p.m., just over 500 passengers were trapped underground. 500 passengers who noticed that water had begun to pool on the tracks outside their windows. They must have known that the suspension of service was connected to some kind of leak, but none could have expected how dire the situation was about to get, or the horror that would unfold as a result. Slowly but surely, over the course of the next hour or so, the water levels outside the subway trains grew higher and higher. Cell phone videos of the incident illustrate the elevating levels of concern, as anxious humming grows into a crescendo of terrified cries when the waterline reaches the windows of the train's sliding doors. By that point, water had begun to leak into the train carriages themselves, and terrified passengers found themselves having to stand on the seats in order to avoid the still rising waters. By the point that it became too hard to breathe in the train carriages, the passengers knew they had to fight for their lives, and they began to break out of the trains and swim for safety. Many described the terror that they felt as they swam harder and faster than ever before, dreading the moment the water line slipped over their heads and only a lungful of oxygen would separate them from a painful death by drowning. We can only imagine their relief as they emerged at the metro system's various stations, wading their way through waist and chest-high waters as the sheer scale of the disaster became evident to them. Elsewhere in the central Chinese city, almost 100 children had to be rescued from a flooded nursery school, with Chinese state media airing footage of them being floated out in plastic tubs given to them by rescue workers. The first affiliated hospital of Zhengzhou also briefly lost power at one point, which naturally made dealing with the flood casualties extremely difficult. However, Chinese authorities were quick to add that power was restored to the hospital within just a few hours, and that the blackout didn't contribute to any of the deaths that day. The floods were such a catastrophe that an entire battalion of the Chinese People's Liberation Army was mobilized after a 20-meter breach emerged in the Luoyang city dam. PLA High Command was apparently told that the dam could collapse at any time, and if it had, it's estimated that the breach would cause tens of thousands of flood-related deaths. Thankfully, the dam held, but for a while, Chinese social media was aflame with horrifying statuses posted by terrified flood victims. "We don't know how to swim. The whole village is about to be washed away," one person wrote, as the ruination of entire families was documented, each in less than 140 characters. Out of the 500 passengers that were trapped underground that evening, it seems a miracle that only 12 people lost their lives. But those are 12 poor souls who still should be with us today. And although we can argue back and forth on the cause of such dramatic rainfall, questions must be asked when the integrity of the city's public transport system fails so spectacularly and with such fatal results. We can only hope that the lessons of the Zhengzhou subway floods will be learned, and in 1,000 years, when the next apocalyptic rainstorm comes around, we'll be much more prepared to deal with it.
My name is Kai, and this incident happened in England when I was about 10 years old. It shocked everybody, as the crime rate where this happened was slim to none. Anyways, let's get into the story. It was a snowy December day, about 1 or 2 days until the Christmas break, so everybody was getting hyper. We didn't really do any work, so me and my 5 friends were talking and whatnot. But then my teacher, Mrs. J, got a text from the principal that a maniac entered the school with a machete, hoping to get some kills. Even though we really didn't do lockdown drills, we were smarter than your run-of-the-mill year 6s, so we quickly turned off the lights, closed the windows, and locked the doors, and armed ourselves with sharp pencils. And I mean very sharp pencils. We were all sitting in the dark waiting for the lockdown to end, but unluckily for us, it didn't. Around 10 minutes into the lockdown, we heard the screams of a woman, a loud stomping near the stairs, and she was singing, "Die, die, die. I'll stab you till you die. Die, die, die. I hope you don't survive." At this point, at least half of the class was crying, and the rest of us were barely keeping it together. At around 15 minutes into the lockdown, the mentally unstable woman stomped up the stairs. This was bad news, as we were the closest upstairs classroom to the stairs. And at this point, Mrs. J passed out. So we were fucked. As we were the closest upstairs classroom to the stairs, the woman tried to smash the door's window so she could attempt to kill the 23 kids. The other 7 were absent. without an adult to protect them. To our horror, she succeeded, and she managed to unlock the door from the outside, and she was now in the room. And she had the most widest and creepiest smile on the planet. Of course, thanks to my luck, she struck me, cutting open my leg. Thanks to the amount of blood pouring out from the side of my leg, I was on the brink of passing out. And I should count my lucky stars that my friends had the guts to fight her, and I might say they managed to knock her out and restrain her. The police arrived and arrested her, and I was transported to the hospital. And I had the worst Christmas break of my life. Turns out the woman had stabbed some of my classmates too, and they were sent to the hospital. Luckily, we all survived. The woman was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The biggest twist of all was that Mrs. J was friends with the woman, and she helped her so she could kill us. That explains why Mrs. J passed out and why our class was targeted. Mrs. J was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I remember I was standing inside a medieval castle. I could see the sky, but the sun wasn't in sight because it was a very cloudy day. I remember seeing there were a lot of children in the area. Some of the children far from me were lined up facing somewhere, while the children near me were scattered. Then, a woman came and led us to fall in line. All of the children followed her, and I figured I should follow her. Some time passed, and I don't know how I figured it out, but I thought that woman must have been a mother figure to the children, and that's why they followed her. So I started to get comfortable around her. As I looked to my left, I realized we were all lined up. Then I started to wonder to myself, why am I in a medieval castle in the first place? I realized this must be a dream. I don't know what got me, but I started to scream, trying to wake myself up. I kept telling myself, this must be a dream. This must be a dream. The mother figure, who was already standing in front of us, looked over to me. She laughed and jumped on me, causing me to fall on my back. I remember the children circled around me while the woman was standing above me. I looked at her and told her, "You're not real. This is a dream." She looked at me as if she was shocked that I figured out this was not real. She laughed maniacally and leaned on me closer. I was so scared that I started to say prayers in my sleep. She continued to laugh even louder while the children just stared at me. Then, suddenly, I woke up. I was breathing heavily and sweating profusely. If you think the weirdness ended there, it didn't. The light in my room was turned off and the door was opened slightly to let some of the light from the hallway enter my room. My bed was near the door and the phone was close to my bed. I checked the time and it was around 3 a.m. I could feel a chill in the room, but I didn't dare to move. I was too scared, and I was trying to process what had just happened. My eyes were half open. I felt someone pulling the blanket up to my shoulders, but I snuggled in the warmth of my blanket since it was so cold. I noticed that the person who placed the blanket on me went to the direction of my sister's room, so I thought it was my sister. But then I also heard footsteps coming from my mother's room, and I went to my sister's room. I thought, who could that be? I called for my mom asking if it was her, and she did not respond. I called my sister, and she came into my room. I asked her if she covered me with a blanket. She said no. Then I asked her if she came from our mother's room. She said yes. I asked my sister if she's the only one in her room. Again, she said yes. I felt the chill run up my spine. I couldn't figure out who covered me with the blanket. It couldn't be my mother because she was fast asleep in her room. And it couldn't be my sister because she just came out of our mother's room.
My name is Justina, and this story happened at my friend's house. It was finally the day. I was going to my best friend's house for a sleepover. Her name is Christina, and she had a really cute small dog. She was already standing in front of the house waiting for me. When I came to see her, she rushed to open the door so we can watch TikTok and play video games all night. We were the type of girls who would eat popcorn, watch scary movies, and play video games. It was around 11 p.m., and we were bored, so Christina said, "Want to play hide and seek in the dark?" I wasn't really sure because I'm pretty scared after watching so many scary movies, but I said yes so she wouldn't be sad. Okay, I said, I'll go hide and you start counting to 20. I started to count. 1, 2, 3. Time passes by. 9, 10, 11. I open my eyes a bit just to see if I can see her, but then I had to stop counting because I had a feeling that something was behind the bed. I couldn't really see it, but it looked really dark. I was kind of naive at the time, and I wanted to look behind the bed to see what was there. I was so close to it, and I could almost see its face. But then Christina shouted, "Hey, why did you stop counting? What happened?" No, everything's fine," I said. "I was just thinking about something." I lied to her so she wouldn't be scared. I didn't know I did a big mistake by talking so loudly. The thing turned her head at me, and she was covered in blood. I saw she was eating Christina's dog. I screamed so loudly, and Christina rushed to the bedroom. When she came, she screamed too because she saw her dead dog. The creature was already gone, and I wanted to tell her what I saw, but right at that time, a glass fell from the kitchen table. It was so loud in that quiet house. We both screamed and ran into the kitchen so fast we almost fell down the stairs. We turned on the lights in the kitchen, and we saw the broken glass. We were so terrified that we hid under the sofa. Christina was under the sofa already, and I was coming behind her. But suddenly, all the cabinets in the kitchen opened, and we both screamed and ran under the sofa. 5 minutes later, we saw some shadows of someone. We thought it might be Christina's parents, so we started to feel better. But the creature came, and we suddenly saw its legs. Christina was about to scream again, so I quickly covered her mouth with my hand. The lights were on, so I could finally see its legs. They were really dark and slimy. It was summertime, so we always left the door to the garden open. The creature stood in the middle of the kitchen for 3 minutes and went to the garden and ran away. We were under the sofa for another 10 minutes, and then we slowly got out from under it. We didn't hear or see anything, so we quickly took our phones and ran to Christina's neighborhood house. We called Christina's parents, but they didn't believe us. Christina's parents came home, and we cried all night, and we were hiding under our blankets. And yeah, if you're wondering what happened to Christina's dog, well, he wasn't there. He just disappeared, even though I know the creature ate it all. I wonder what would have happened if I didn't cover Christina's mouth under the sofa when the creature saw us. Would we be dead? My name is Maggie. This is about a dream I had when I was around 6 years old. I was living with my mom, my dad, and my brother at the time. There was one night that I had gotten ready for bed and went to sleep in my room. In my dream, I was hiking on a snowy biome. It was a tall mountain. In my dream, there was this drug or virus called Turbo. It made you go crazy and want to get other people to have it too. I was with 2 friends. One of my friends was a brunette girl, and she had glasses. The other was a boy with brown hair. We were hiking and found a building close to the top. My friends and I had all smiled and hoped to find some place to sleep. We had reached it and finally went in. I screamed and hugged one of my friends when we saw an alien-like creature. The creature then grabbed me by my wrist and led me into a room. "Inject her with Turbo," it said. I looked and saw that there were people behind me. The creature threw me to the ground and left the room. I screamed and kicked. I could hear my friends trying to reason with these creatures. The people held me down, and I had gotten away and kicked them. I heard commotion coming from another room. Then it went silent. My friends soon came into the room and hugged me. I looked behind me to see a friend that had a needle with blue liquid. I kicked my friend and pushed her. I couldn't resist crying and sat in the corner with blankets and cried. Hours later, my mom came under the blankets with me. I cried and hugged her so tight. My mom looked a little different. She looked pale and skinny. I really didn't notice, so I kept hugging her. I soon started to feel sick and told my mom, "I'll be back with medicine," she said. I sat down and threw up in a bucket. My mom came back under the blanket and gave me a dose of blue medicine. Before I took it, a strike of memory hit me and I pushed it away. My mom insisted on giving it to me. I grabbed the bottle and looked at it. I screamed at my mom in disbelief. "This is not medicine, Mom. It's turbo." I yelled and kicked and screamed. My mom put her hand over my mouth and I cried. She said, "Turbo makes me feel good." I yelled and kicked her in the stomach and ran away. My friend grabbed me and they held me down. I remember feeling woozy and I felt the pain of the drug being injected into my body. And as I woke up, this dream kept replaying over and over until one day it stopped. The weird thing about it is that I have a scar where they stabbed the needle in my skin.
The very first night of my job as a pizza delivery guy turned out to be something that you would only expect to happen in movies. The incident gave me sleepless nights, and I remember suffering from sleep paralysis thereafter. It was in February. We were nearing our closing time. The other delivery guy who would normally stay until closing time had left early that day for whatever reason. I remember him mentioning some personal, unavoidable problem. All of a sudden, the phone on the counter rang. It was past midnight, and we didn't think it was strange for someone to call at this hour for pizza, probably midnight cravings. But then it hit me. I was going to be the one to deliver it. The manager had received the call and gave me the address the caller had mentioned. I looked back at him with a frustrated look and he shrugged. I had no choice. The manager said I better be quick as he would have to wait till I came back. The chef handed the pizza to me with a frown, and I could clearly read the annoyance on his face. I didn't recognize the place and the address at first, but I was accustomed to delivering to addresses I had not heard of before. This particular address was difficult to find. After a lot of hassle, I found the house at the town outskirts. It was the last house in a row of houses opposite a long stretch of thicket. Forests have often freaked me out, so I decided to make it quick and get back as soon as possible. When I neared the house, I observed the front door to be ajar. Strange. I rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one answered. Suddenly, a gust of wind threw open the front door even more, and I was able to make out the interiors of the drawing room. Brightly lit with all the lights on and completely empty. I entered anyway and called out for someone. No sound but a low, pleasant music playing from the cassette player on the cabinet beside me. It was so eerily silent with that music in the background that I started freaking out. I could hear my own breathing. Only then, from behind the door in the far corner, did I hear a sound. I headed towards that room. Shouldn't have. When I opened the door, I was expecting the caller, but I got the nightmare of my life. It was a person, all right, but dead. Almost. The corpse was lying on the bed in a pool of blood. Its abdomen was tore open, and the eyes directly looking at me. I wanted to throw up. In a split second, I was out of the house, not caring about who it was, or who did that, or the cold pizza in the box. I ran for my life, just before pausing in horror at a face staring from behind the door of the same room where I had just been. It was a man, showing only his head from behind the door, with a sickening smile on its face. I had been in the same room with that man for a minute or so. This was enough for me. I stepped on the gas and sped to my shop, throwing the pizza at my clueless manager, and from there to my home, where I laid for 4 days with a high fever. I quit my job thereafter. But what struck me afterwards was that no other houses except that cursed home had their lights on. It was like all of them were abandoned. I shrugged off that feeling at the time, but now as I come to think of that, I shudder. What was that place? My name's Oliver. I'm now 23, 24 on August 22nd, and I go by he, him, they, them as my pronouns. This happened to me when I was in my second year at university, majoring in hospitality. I was 20 at the time. I lived in a rental apartment that had 3 rooms on the 3rd floor of the apartment building, which was 15 minutes away by foot from my university, so I shared them with another 2 people to get cheaper rent. I shared them with a 3rd-year senior named Michael, who majored in electrical engineering, and an alumni who was in for his MBA for linguistics named Sam. We sometimes do like to play pranks on each other since we were kind of active on social media. Yeah, for the clout. Anyways, as I remember, on the 25th of August 2016, about 3 days after my birthday, I had headed back home after a part-time job around 6 p.m. On that day, both Michael and Sam were out drinking, which made me the only person home. As soon as I arrived in the hallway of my apartment, I saw a girl crouching in front of the front door to my room. I looked around for a bit before letting out a short, tiring sigh and said, "Miss, do you live here? Do you need my help to call the landlord just in case you lost your key or something?" I waited for a reply to my question for about a minute or so, and all of a sudden she started to stand up and look at me, and she asked if Leon was around. I kind of sighed with relief and told her Leon went out drinking with his friends. "If you would like, you can wait inside." She then smiled and nodded her head. I, however, without hesitation, just unlocked the door and let her in. I then told her to sit wherever she feels comfortable, which she ended up sitting on the sofa. I tried offering her drinks and asked if she ate dinner, and she said, "I don't need anything. I just want to meet Leon." I raised my eyebrow a little, and I proceeded to ask what her relationship was with Leon, and she told me that she was his girlfriend. From what I know about Leon, I've never seen him go on a date, or even talk about his dating life. All he ever told us was that he used to date a girl 5 years ago when he was heavily drunk a few months back. I then just shrugged it off since I wasn't interested in prying into someone's love life. I then asked her if she tried calling Leon, and she replied with, "I don't have a phone with me." I then raised my eyebrows again with a questioning face. I mean, it's 2016. Anyone her age owns a smartphone at least. I then just grabbed my phone out of my pocket and offered it to her to use it to call Leon, but she refused and said, "I think I'll just wait." I then said, "Are you sure? They'll be pretty late. Maybe leave a text?" But she replied with, "No, I said I'll wait," sternly. So I let out a sigh and said, "Look, lady, I'm tired, but if you insist on waiting, at least text him." I then waited for her to reply, and all she did was turn to the left side and stare out the window. I soon then just gave up and told her I'll be going for a quick shower. I brought my phone along to the shower and texted Leon about his girlfriend, and then I hopped into the shower. About 25 to 30 minutes later, I received a call from Leon. I was done with my shower and putting on my shirt and shorts, and I answered his phone call with him saying, "Hey, read your text. Is this some kind of half-assed prank? I'm not dating anyone currently." I replied to him, "I feel like I'm being pranked here. She insisted on waiting for you. She told me she's your girlfriend." He then asked me what her name was, which I never got to ask her. Then he asked me to describe her. I told him that she has long brownish hair with brown eyes, probably about 5'2", wearing a dark blue sweatshirt too big for her, with a pair of jeans and black sneakers. Soon after hearing that, Leon stayed quiet for about 5 minutes. I asked him, "What's wrong, crazy ex-girlfriend?" while chuckling. He then said something I didn't expect to hear. "Ollie, that girl, she sounds like she was my girlfriend from 5 years ago. She died from jumping off her family's apartment building." I stayed in silence in shock. Sweat started breaking out. He then said, "Just don't do or say anything to her. I'll be back in a few minutes, but don't hang up." I then could hear him running through the phone. I, on the other hand, didn't believe him, thinking it might be a prank. I went out of the bathroom with my hair still kind of wet, and there I saw her standing on the rail of the balcony while saying, "I'm never good enough for him," while tears were running down her face. Upon seeing this, I threw my phone down and ran close to the balcony entrance and told her to come inside desperately. She only turned her face toward me and smiled and said, "He will never find happiness," and jumped off. I screamed while trying to grab her, but only missed. I closed my eyes in fear, then opened my eyes to look down and see nothing. That girl who jumped off was nowhere to be found. Soon after that, Leon arrived, panting, and he saw me on the balcony and walked towards me and asked where she was. I told him what happened. He sighed in relief and told me that he's been seeing her in his dreams, and sometimes would see a silhouette of her from time to time. It was probably because he kept that dark blue sweatshirt she'd wore when she jumped off, which originally belonged to Leon. He received them back from her mother a month ago during the anniversary of her death. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about that experience. Leon still hasn't dated anyone, and he never opens up about what happened between him and her. I never forced him to tell me anything, but the words she muttered before jumping about how he will never find happiness makes me think there might be more to her story. As for the sweatshirt, Leon told me he left it on her gravestone, and I've never seen her again.